Hello and welcome to our coverage of the 86th Tour de France. I'm Phil Liggett and joined in commentary by Paul Sherwin. Well, after last year's sensational Tour de France, who knows what we can expect this time around. Here, the start being made outside of the Chateau of the Puy de Fou. The riders facing up to just over 3 weeks of cycling and almost 2,500 miles. Well, even before a wheel is turned in anger, big names are not in the Tour de France. Out is last year's winner, Marco Pantani. Out too, the two previous winners in Jan Ullrich and Bjarne Riis. And in fact, the Tour de France, for the first time in almost 50 years, has no rider in it who's won the Tour de France before. Anyway, this is the route they face. And this time it's a clockwise direction around the hexagon of France. The riders going north to Amiens, then across down the bottom of Luxembourg and Belgium before dropping due south to the Alps, then a journey across the Pyrenees, and then it's due north through Bordeaux, Futuroscope and on to Paris. In all, 3,690 kilometres of cycling, and the last man to start of the 180 in this prologue over 6.8 kilometres, Paul, the best finisher of a year ago, Bobby Julich.
Finished third in the Tour de France last year. He hasn't had a great season so far, Phil, because he's based everything on this month, the Tour de France. He wants to be the American winner.
So, a few deep breaths. Julich is away, and he's chasing, in fact, the names like Lance Armstrong, Abraham Olano, and this is the arrival of Christophe Moreau. The time which has stood right throughout the day, that by Rick Verbrugge, is about to be beaten, and it's coming late in the day. Christophe Moreau has pulled out a good one here, comes up to the line, 8.16. That's the new leaderboard, 8.17.48.
Fifth last year in the opening time trial of the Tour de France, but the man doing great times out on the course, Phil, is Lance Armstrong, wearing 181. He's got the fastest time at half distance.
Well, he really is flying, Paul, and he looks so good here, making his big return to the Tour de France. He hasn't been here for a couple of years because of his illness, but he's back now. This is the man sweeping up at the back of the field. He's up towards the climb of the Côte du Fossé now. And this is the world champion, Abraham Olano, sandwiched between them and also looking very good at the checks.
All the big names out on the course now. Chris Boorman as well, the winner 3 occasions of the prologue time trial at the Tour de France. He too is out on the course now. This is the right-hand bend. You have to take this at full bore, 50 kilometres an hour, and try and keep the momentum on the first part of this climb.
A massive crowd here. This is the place to watch the prologue. There's no doubt about that as they see the riders in full flight. Back to the finishing line now. The best time in is Christophe Moreau, and I don't think that Pavel Tonkov is going to approach that. He's still a fair way to go down this straight. There's the best time, and Tonkov is not going to be happy with this, Paul, because he's trained specifically for this race.
His goal is a lot longer down the road. In fact, he's looking at the end of the 3 weeks to try and climb high up in the overall rankings. Not a great prologue by him. 8 minutes, 30 seconds, losing about 23 seconds. But Alex Zula's got a great time. He's coming up to the line now.
Now, Zula's been out for 8 months, suspension for taking EPO. He's back. He had a bad Tour of Italy, but it looks slow. He's come out fighting here today. Zula's on a great time. All of the best time checks. 8.09 at the line, the new leader.
Well, at half distance, in fact, Phil, Lance Armstrong was 1 second ahead of him. This is Bobby Julich now on the Côte du Fossé. You can see how difficult this climb is. Julich is out of the saddle. It is a tough climb, and especially on a low-profile machine. And it doesn't look as if Julich is too comfortable out on the road.
Oh, Chris Boorman now finishing behind Zula. Zula was a good marker for him, but Chris hasn't got the better in this time. It's a long way down this straight here at the Puy de Fou. So Boorman, the winner of the prologue last year, he's done it 3 times in all. He's not going to do it this time. He's dropped away from it, 8.17, 8.18.46. That's a bad time for Chris.
He won't be happy with that. He's based his season on winning the prologue. The man wearing number 51, Olano, out on the course. But Armstrong is here, and Armstrong is well inside the time of Alex Zula.
Well, he's been scorching at all the time checks. What a comeback this could be. There's only 2 men behind him now. Armstrong is the leader, and we'll have to wait. 8.2.5. That is astonishing.
Unbelievable, Phil. 50.7 kilometres an hour. That's nearly 32 miles an hour. Abraham Olano, the time trial champion of the world, is outside the time of Lance Armstrong, so I don't think anybody is going to beat him.
Well, there's only, in fact, 1 rider left now, and Julich has been behind at all of the time checks. Olano hasn't done it either. And here is the last man on the course, round the bottom turn. Now it's a headwind finish, and it's not going to be a winning time. Lance Armstrong has made a magical return to the Tour de France. There's the time of Julich, already outside of that of Lance Armstrong. Remember that Julich lost this time trial a year ago in Dublin by just 5 seconds on Chris Boorman. It's going to be a lot more than that now, as Julich Julich suffers towards the line. The clock is counting away from Armstrong. Armstrong will be the first Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France as Bobby Julich comes over in 8:30.75, 28 seconds slower than Lance Armstrong.
Well, that's an incredible start to the Tour de France, Phil. He's back at the camping car. Everybody's there to congratulate him. Frankie Andreu, his 8th Tour de France, the captain of the team, and Johan Bruneel, the team manager. I don't think he could have believed that before the start of this tour.
Well, what a start for Bruneel. Indurain did 8 minutes 12 seconds over this course in 1993, and now Lance has gone 10 seconds quicker. Zuller, by the way, finished second to Indurain, 8 seconds slower. Now he's finished second to Armstrong, 7 seconds slower. So at least he stays consistent. But this is the new wearer of the Maillot Jaune, the first wearer indeed of this year's Tour de France. Lance Armstrong gets the yellow jersey ahead of Zuller, Olano and Morrow. Let's now go to Gary Imlach, who is interviewing Lance Armstrong at the finish.
Congratulations, what a way to announce your return to the Tour.
I mean, right now I'm so surprised, but yet I'm so pleased and so happy for the team and for the staff and the other riders. It's of course it's a big story, but for the moment we're so pleased. It's unbelievable.
You say surprised, 7 seconds over the second place man over less than 7 kilometers. That is pretty surprising going.
Yeah, that's all I know. I don't know the time, so I didn't look at my time the whole course, and then I knew before I started the best time was 8:20, and I came across the line and I saw right around 8 minutes, and I thought, yeah, maybe it can't be right. But of course I gave everything, and I feel good.
Well, you certainly proved that, Lance, and the leader of the Tour de France now by 7 seconds, Le Puy de Fou, the capital of the folklore of the Vendée, has certainly been kind to Lance Armstrong today. The next stage for them, 208 kilometres now from Montaigu to Châlons. The Tour de France has wasted no time in finding itself a new hero, and from Montaigu this morning, it's the American Lance Armstrong on their Independence Day who will lead this race away. Well, what a big difference a year has made. Last year we regularly brought reports of police raids on the event and riders being involved in drug scandals. Now that problem is still with us, evidenced by the fact that some big names are not here, but the news media is here as well as the sports media. Well, of course, we hope the next 3 weeks will see an end to all of that, but it's been a lot happening this past year. And first of all, before we go to the action, let's go to Gary Imlach to bring us right up to date.
It started with an arrest. Festina team masseur Willy Vert caught at the French-Belgian border with a carload of the performance-enhancing drug EPO. 9 days later, the world's top team, led by France's favourite rider Richard Virenque, were thrown out of the race. Another 6 left in protest, including the Dutch TVM squad after their hotel was raided by police. And for a few dramatic hours on stage 17, when the riders brought the entire race to a halt, it looked as though it might never restart. By the time Italy's Marco Pantani claimed victory in Paris, along with fewer than half the riders who'd started, it was clear that the end of the Tour wouldn't be the end of the matter. And so it's proved, with a number of criminal inquiries still in progress and several big names involved. Casino rider Rodolfo Massi is accused of trafficking, Althe's team doctor Nicolas Terrados of doping. From Festina, Willy Vert, manager Bruno Roussel, Dr. Eric Rijkaard and Richard Virenque are all under investigation. Most of Virenque's teammates eventually admitted drug use, served bans and are now riding again. But Virenque denies everything, despite increasingly detailed allegations from Willy Vert, who's published a book complete with pages from the drug dosing diary he kept at Festina. Among other visitors to the investigation headquarters in Lille have been some of the most powerful men in cycling. Jean-Marie Leblanc, director of the Tour, and Hein Verbruggen, head of cycling's international ruling body, the UCI, have both been asked how much they knew of any abuse and whether they could have done more to fight it. Certainly they're trying now. In January, the UCI announced quarterly medical tests for all riders, albeit administered by their teams, along with surprise tests of their own both in and out of competition, and increased penalties for any transgressors. The French Federation launched a long-term programme to keep tabs on every aspect of a rider's health, and team sponsors drew up their own anti-doping charter. The Tour added a moral condition to qualification.
Les organisateurs se réserveront le droit de récuser jusqu'au départ de l'épreuve tout coureur et toute équipe qui porterait atteinte à l'image et à la réputation du Tour de France pour fait de dopage notamment.
Still, not everyone seemed to get the message.
Quelle puissance! Quelle force! Extraordinaire!
In May, the world #1 Frank van den Broek was arrested over his association with a Paris horse doctor accused of doping. Also on the doctor's list of patients, Richard Virenque, who was fined by his new team Polti, but allowed to ride the Giro d'Italia. Which brings us to the real shocker. Marco Pantani, defending champion of both the Giro and the Tour, thrown off the race for an abnormally high red blood cell count.
In questo momento vorrei solamente un po' di rispetto e un saluto ai tifosi. Mi dispiace solo per il ciclismo.
Pantani and Van den Broek saved the Tour organisers the agony by ruling themselves out of this year's race. But that still left some tough decisions.
L'équipe TVM Farfrit est, dans son ensemble, récusée. Le coureur Richard Virenque n'est pas le bienvenu cette année dans le Tour de France.
As well as Virenque and TVM, the final exclusion list had on it Philippe Gaumont and Laurent Roux, who've both been banned for drugs, Onthay's team Dr. Nicolas Terrados, and manager Manolo Saiz, who'd lambasted the Tour organisation as he led his team out of the race last year. And that should have been that, except that Polti and Onthay both appealed to the UCI, citing a dusty old rule about how much notice they should have been given of their exclusion. The UCI listened with the rapt attention of an organisation scared to death of being sued and promptly applied the letter of the law at the expense of the spirit. Reluctantly, the Tour had to admit both Saiz and Virenque, whose arrival at this year's race looked depressingly similar to his departure from last year's. On the face of it then, a bit of a mess, but at least it's a public mess, and if all the debate and scrutiny contributes towards cleaning up the sport, then it'll also have been a useful mess. Certainly yesterday's blood checks on all 180 riders were a useful step forward, and you can bank on there being plenty more of those as the race continues. And talking of the race, let's get on with today's.
Well, Gary, it's been a typical day in the first stage of the Tour de France here. A long breakaway by Thierry Gouvenou, 124th after the prologue, and he's been out front by over 6 minutes. He's been caught now, inside 3 kilometres to go, and the sprinters are going to have their say.
And the sprinters at the moment are being led at the front by the men in the red jersey. That's the Seiko Cannondale team of Mario Cipollini. Second place, in fact, is the Italian champion, Salvatore Commessa. But these guys really know how to put Mario Cipollini into orbit, and they want him to get the first stage here, Phil.
But what we are seeing today, Paul, is no real organisation by all of the teams here. And it's not the old red guard of Cipollini. We've got 3 of them here. Normally we have 5 or 6 of them. And it seems to be more or less a free-for-all here as the sprinters try to get through.
A lot of chaos there. You can see riders moving up around the outside. A lot of work at the front has been done by the Française des Jeux. The new French sprinter, Jimmy Casper, will also be looking to get himself in the final 200 metres.
Well, the French are pinning a lot of hopes on this young man. He's very rapid. This is his first Tour de France. Because of his good sprinting and winning, he's been put in the team here. He's not expected to go the distance, but he's expected to win a stage in this opening week. Now the riders warming up for the line. A Casino rider on the front at the moment. And now as they start to run through here now, on the far right there, the white jersey of Henk Vogels trying to pick up Stuart O'Grady. O'Grady wants the green jersey this year, and he said so. Eric Zabel's going to give him trouble, though. Zabel tucked in off to the left of our picture.
Right in the middle, though, it's Cantina Tollo. They're trying to sort the sprint out for them, and Nicola Minali. In the middle there is Christophe Capella, the rider from Big Mat, and Jay Sweet riding his first Tour de France, the Big Mat Aubert Australian rider.
So round that right-hander, a lot of riders lost position there now as the Team Domestiques lost their leaders, and one that's gone out of the wrong way is Henk Vogels looking for now Stuart O'Grady. He's not there. That looks like De Cruz of the Big Mat team opened up, but he hasn't got Capel on his wheel, and the white jersey of Vogels hasn't got O'Grady on his wheel. So this is all going wrong for the lead-out men at the moment. Capel is in 3rd place, and just behind him is Kirsipuu in the Estonian Championship jersey, which he's won for the 2nd year, by the way. Now as Magnus Backstedt leads out, as he tries to find his teammate O'Grady there, wasn't around. Now coming on the far right, Jan Kirsipuu is having a go. A big challenge coming too from Tom Steels on the left. It's Kirsipuu Steels for the line and trying to get on terms. Cipollini is out of this one as Kirsipuu takes it on the line. They said he wasn't a man for the big occasion. Well, he is now, but he hasn't done enough to win the leader's yellow jersey, but he's done enough to win the stage.
Magnificent performance by Jan Kirsipuu. He really came through out of nowhere. You can see on the left-hand side a big challenge from Tom Steels. On the right-hand side there is Erik Zabel. He's looking at the points jersey, and he doesn't seem to have the zip that he had a couple of years ago.
So victory then to Jan Kirsipuu, and what a great one as he stands on the podium, his first ever stage win in the Tour.
Jan, this area has always been very successful for you, but did you think you had a chance to win the Tour de France today?
I thought about it, yes, all the day already, and especially when I saw the results of yesterday's prologue. I saw that I was the best sprinter. I did the best time among the sprinters, so I thought it's maybe a sign for today.
Yes, and a very good finish indeed, but not quite good enough for the yellow jersey. He's still down the way a little bit. Lance Armstrong keeping his advantage of 7 seconds over Alex Zülle and 11 over Abraham Olano.
It's great to win the yellow jersey, but actually to ride throughout the stage of the Tour de France wearing yellow must have been a special day for you.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like I said a minute ago, I was so nervous this morning. I thought I was, you know, I thought I didn't have my bike shoes or my helmet or something, but in the race I felt more comfortable.
So 2 days in yellow for Lance Armstrong, leading Alex Zülle by 7 seconds, and Abraham Olano 11 seconds in third place. Christophe Moreau, after his great time trial, is fourth, and Boardman, same for him, he lies in fifth place. Jan Kirsipuu is the sprinter, he's 16 seconds off the pace. And it's good to see Stuart O'Grady's name on the list as well. Now they're facing up to stage 2 from Châlons to Saint-Nazaire, and this will be another flat ride across the bridge. This morning, although conditions are still overcast, no sign of rain yet, as the riders now say goodbye to the Vendée and they head up to Saint-Nazaire. Basically, this is a flat course, but it does have some unusual features. And this morning, Gary Inlac was out early to have a look at one of them.
Phil, this is the 84-kilometre mark of today's stage. At least we think it is, because to be honest, the road markings are a bit hard to make out.
And that's because the road is a bit hard to make out, submerged as it is several feet beneath the Atlantic. This is the Passage du Gois, which connects the Ile de Noirmoutier and the French mainland. First crossed in 1766 on horseback, as commemorated by a plaque on the wall of the local CAF, and ever since by a variety of other means. Only at low tide, though, because this is the Wimbledon of local access roads. The covers only come off for about 4 hours a day, which makes time in the supermarket run a crucial issue for the islanders. There are a series of safety platforms along the 4.5-kilometre route, just in case the tide turns against you, but you'd be hard-pressed to get the weekly shop up there with you, let alone a family saloon. Plenty of people have made it across, though, including the German army in 1940, and the Tour itself the last time the race started in this part of France 6 years ago. On today's route, the riders will head out to the island via the modern bridge, and conditions permitting, back along the cobbled causeway to the mainland.
If the tour organisers have read their tide tables properly, we should have some pretty spectacular shots along here later on. If not, it'll be a quick ring round for Charlton Heston's agent's number. Back to Phil.
Thanks, Gay. Let's hope the tide's out by the time we get there. The rollout, 110 miles today from Châlons. These are the principal players at the moment. Mariano Piccoli in polka dot, King of the Mountains. Lance Armstrong starting his second full day in yellow. And on the right here, Jan Kirsipuu.
A dream start for the Tour de France for Lance, but I have to tell you one thing, Phil, he's going to get really challenged today by Jan Kirsipuu, who's only 6 seconds off. But at the Passage au Gois, Armstrong is going into that area there in second position. He's riding very well.
Well, they've raced flat out here to be sure they got onto this narrow road and saw the front of it. And you know, Paul, I heard there's something like a crash there, and there it is. It happened at the back of the field. A number of riders are down here. This is a massive pile up here.
His body's all over the place. There's 1 or 2 riders down there and injured. I can see a rider from US Postal sitting in the middle of the road there. That looks a bit like Jonathan Waters. There's another man getting up there as well, riding off. But this has caused a big split in the main field. But Armstrong predicted this, and he's right near the front.
There's an awful lot of riders have been delayed here too, and that's Calcaterra from Seiko also. There's a wrestling match going on there. Let's have a look at the crash now. Watch the bottom of your picture here, because they start to fall on the left, and because the road is so slippery, I think there's a whole ricochet effect here.
What's happened is those first 2 riders have gone down, and the people behind have all panicked. They've touched the brakes and the wheels have locked up. Mario Cipollini wasn't involved because he's at the front in this small group. There is the green jersey of Jan Kirsipuu. Magnus Backstedt is there as well for Crédit Agricole, and there is the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong with a good teammate, George Hincapie.
Well, this could be a gift sent from heaven here, Paul, because this is a small group of about 12 or 13 riders. Trapped in that back group are some of the big players. Alex Zülle was involved in that fall, so too is Michael Bogart, two principal players. Look how the field is split up here. Now, remember, we are 84 kilometres covered now of a 176-kilometre day, so they've got chance to recover.
There's still 110 kilometres to go to the finish now. Hincapie's moving to the front, putting the hammer down there. He'll be happy to see that his man, Lance Armstrong, in the yellow jersey's got across this area in safe conditions. But Race Radio Phil telling us one more serious member in that break, in that accident there. In fact, Ivan Gotti too has gone down, the winner of the recent Tour of Italy.
Well, as far as we know, most are up and riding. There has been a call for the ambulance, but most seem to be on the way now as the riders start to exit the Passage du Gois. Well, the last time it came across here was 1993, and now a little group has formed at the front. It's swelled somewhat, Paul, but still missing here as we head towards the Pont de Saint-Nazaire in the distance there. That itself, by the way, is a fourth category climb. We're now approaching 166 kilometres, and the gap is growing.
Unbelievable. There are 75 riders in this group, and although Alex Zulle's Banesto team really chased hard to try and limit their losses, they held it at 30 seconds for a long time, Phil, but the last official time check we had was in fact they're more than 4 minutes behind this leading group of riders.
Well, they've worked so hard in this breakaway. The chase, I think, has gone off at the back now because they're very dispirited. There's 3 good riders caught back there, Bogart, Gotti and Zülle. This has been a terrible day for them as they go over the Pont de Saint-Nazaire. Once over the top of this, it's only 10 kilometres down to the finish. And here's Gotti here now, number 61. They are losing huge time.
A lot of riders losing big time today. There's Manuel Beltran, but at the finish it's a big lead out coming for Erik Zabel, and this is Stefan Wesermann right on the front.
And this is a huge gap as well for this breakaway group. What a gift now as Lars Mikkelsen goes for it. And Jan Kurzepuu is there now. Well, he's done so well today. He's won all of the sprint bonuses. He's racing for the yellow jersey now. Armstrong safely in the pack. He's gaining time over his rivals. Mikkelsen looks over, waiting for somebody else. Jimmy Casper goes on the far right now. Casper makes a dig. Martinello tries to grab his wheel. Zabel is there too in the pink top. But here comes Mario Cipollini on the far right now. And poor Jimmy Casper's gone far too soon off on the left now as Tom Steels comes and Kurzepuu tries. Steels gets it. Steels on the line, and right alongside him there was Mario Cipollini. But it was a close finish. Steels gets the win, but Kurzepuu should get the yellow jersey.
He certainly should. He put in a great sprint all day, and this is how it was won. You can see Jimmy Casper in the white there. He panicked. That's the sign of youth coming out the outside there on the white jersey. That is Tom Steels. The big sprinters right alongside him, Mario Cipollini and Erik Zabel. When it comes to the kick, though, Phil, I have to say Tom Steels really has it.
Superb finish by Steels. He won 4 stages of the Tour last year, don't forget, and now he's opened his account very early on indeed, because the former Belgian national champion gets his win. But this man has got the yellow jersey now. He leads the Tour by just a few seconds, 14 to be precise. And this is the main field coming in. Look at the clock at the right, because Zülle and co have lost an awful lot. And Mark Wouters, he was injured in the crash and in fact stopped a few miles down the road, and so too sadly did Jonathan Vaughters of US Postal. And I think this is a rider on great form who's sadly going to be missed by Lance Armstrong. Let's have a look at the overall situation. There it is. Now we can go to Paul again.
Lance, once again, the Tour de France proved that you have to be attentive on every stage, because anything can happen.
Yeah, it's a tough race, and it's 3 weeks, and you know it's always the first week. Everybody hates the first week. It's dangerous. It's nervous, and you have guys that are only going to be here a week or 10 days, and they're normally classics guys, and they like the wind and they like the flat roads. And you mix them in with guys who want to win the Tour de France and have to wait 10 days for the mountains and the time trials. And when they come together, sometimes the mix is dangerous for the overall. And today was a good example.
Well, this is the next stage they face now, a little bit shorter, 194 kilometres, 178 riders left in. Just the 2 crash victims out of the Tour at the moment to swing into the last kilometre here. And the rider who's gone down there, Moreno Di Biasi, Paul, this is coming down to a bunch sprint again, but it was a dangerous right-hander, that.
Everyone taking risks. Everybody wants to stay at the front at this moment. The man right on the front, though, is the champion of Holland. There's De Biase down on the ground. He looks okay. They've taken his bike. In fact, the police may have taken his bike back down to the police station, but he should be up and riding very shortly. On the front is Martin Den Bakker, obviously leading the sprint out for Robbie McEwen, who's up there in the orange and white jersey in third place.
Well, sadly for De Biase, he was outside the kilometre there, so he's losing time while he's on the floor, but I believe he's now up and riding. As we see the riders head down towards the line here, this again is being a very, very difficult lead-out sprint. On the front is still the Dutch champion Martin Den Bakker. They're hoping that Robbie McEwen can produce the goods here, because they've lost potentially their race leader because of that crash a couple of days ago in the Passage du Gois of Michael Bogert, and that really is sad.
A lot of riders in white jerseys up near the front there. That's the Française de Jeu. They want to try and get a win for Jimmy Casper, 21 years of age, the darling of France. He's the sprinter they want to take over, and coming up to the front now, as always, Phil, at the end of these stages, the pink and white jerseys of Team Telecom, that is the team of Erik Zabel. But they're talking to each other. They don't want to lead out just right now. They want to wait a little longer.
And in this field too, don't forget, is the new leader of the Tour now, Johan Kirsipuu. He pulled out the 6-second win bonus of Fede Breton right out at the start this morning after only 23 kilometres. So he's building himself a lead in this race. Now, can he finish it off with another stage win?
He'd be pretty happy if he could, because his lead now at the moment is 20 seconds over Lance Armstrong, and he has proved he's a very good sprinter. There's a lot of misunderstanding between these teams, Phil. The Seiko Cannondale riders are looking over their shoulders. They want to know where Mario Cipollini is. Look out for the green jersey, because wearing the green jersey today, in fact, is Tom Steels. He's not leading that competition, but in second place, he's right near the front as well.
Well, all of the teams have got their sprinters and domestics trying to break this up. There's no actual liaison between the rides at all this year. None of the standard leads outs we normally see. As they now start to open up for the line here, it looks as though Telecom might have themselves a little bit organised. This is a very good finish here in Laval. First time the race has come here for the finish now, as again Casper in the middle as he tries to go. Van Bon is leading out, but he hasn't found Robbie McEwen on his wheel, and that is highlighting the disorganisation in these teams now, as the Les Françaises du Jeu team try to get their man Jimmy Casper up there. He's fourth wheel at the moment. Lars Mikkelsen is giving him a good lead out. Casper's got his wheel. Mikkelsen giving everything here now. McEwen trying to come through it. It isn't going to work out, because again, watch out for the green jersey of Steels. He's spotted the line and he's gone for it. What a finish here by Tom Steels. Jude O'Grady challenged him all too late. Tom Steels has got 2 wins out of 2. What a finish.
But Tom Steels, Phil, is proving he's the fastest sprinter in this Tour de France. The team are not helping him at all, but once he finds the gap, he goes straight through it. And you see Erik Zabel again is close to the win, but just can't quite make it.
The riders in the Tour de France are always under pressure. The last thing Jackie Durand wanted was a slap in the face from his own team car. And let's hope he didn't damage the machine either, because one of those Lotto bikes is our competition prize this week. And if that wasn't enough, poor Jackie was almost run over by a rival team car. In the end, with pain a part of his daily life in the Tour, the Frenchman continued and is currently 170th overall. But when your luck's in, it's really in. And the Belgian Tom Steels celebrated in grand style his second stage win at the Tour in Laval yesterday. If he can make it 3 in a row today, he equals the 51-years-old record of the Italian Gino Bartoli. So can he?
I hope so.
Well, he shouldn't lack confidence, because he's never sprinted better in his life. And the course today, the same distance as yesterday, 194.5 kilometres. But there are some great sprinters in this year's Tour de France. So let's go to Paul Sherwin now, who will assess the form of the men who think they can beat him.
Mario Cipollini would be a good bet to beat Tom Steels. He was fuming after the finish yesterday. He'd been in an ideal position to win. In one of the last corners, he was forced off his line, and another rider tried to climb over his back wheel. He lost his place in the pack. Super Mario loves the headlines, and he'll try and grab them again today. Erik Zabel has been consistently near the front of the pack since the start of the Tour. He'd love to win today, it's his birthday. But he seems to have lost a bit of his speed and hasn't won a stage in the Tour de France since 1997. New kid on the block is Jimmy Casper. He's cocky and confident enough to win. At 21 years of age, though, he's still learning. But if he can get a clear shot at the line, he'll show them his pure speed. His frustration at losing yesterday was evident, and he banged his handlebars in rage and disappointment. Jan Kirsipuu is the most successful rider of the current season with 15 wins. He's already shown he's one of the fastest sprinters at the Tour, but he's using a lot of energy to hold on to the yellow jersey, and his focus is not totally on winning the stage. Stuart O'Grady's not a real sprinter like Erik Zabel or Mario Cipollini, but he's determined and courageous enough to hold his place with the big boys. If anyone makes a mistake in the last 300 metres, O'Grady will be ready to pounce. All of those riders are going to be up to beat Tom Steels today. But if it does come down to a sprint at the end, it's a 1 kilometre straight road up to the finish line. And Seiko Cannondale are the ideal team to put Mario Cipollini into orbit. If it is going to be a sprint, I reckon Mario's going to win.
Confident Paul Sherwin there. 177 riders left in the race. 194 kilometres the distance today as we go from the Val to Blois. And a nice gentle rollout, Paul, but this race hasn't wasted any time at all so far.
Jackie Durand on the front there, but it's a very fast stage. You can see the average over the first couple of hours of the day, 50.3 kilometres an hour.
Well, we're into the last kilometre now here at Blois, and again it's Mike Weissman who looks over his shoulder and sees if he's got his man on his wheel, and he hasn't, and he gives up sprinting because of it. Zabel again hasn't done anything about it, but this man's got Cipollini on his wheel, and a perfect lead out now. This will be Gian Matteo Fagnini who's taking now Cipollini, shown in the finish. He's gone for it. Cipollini is towing the best sprinters towards the line, but you'll never get by this man when he has such a clear shot at the finish line, and he's being challenged right by Zabel. Again Zabel beaten, and right on the line Mario Cipollini is back.
Super Mario, give him a finishing straight like that, Phil, and nobody is going to come past him when he's in flow, full flow. And again, Erik Zabel's there, but the speed is gone.
He must be feeling very frustrated, and again O'Grady getting into the frame, but Mario Cipollini, he looks so cool when he wins. There's the result, ahead of Zabel O'Grady. Tom Steels this time having to be content with 4th place, and looking further down, Kirsipuu, all of the sprinters getting through and finding the Lion King was roaring the best here on the road to Blois today. On the podium then, his first victory in a stage in the Tour de France this year, and now looking much more confident. Overall, though, Kirsipuu keeps his yellow jersey, 16 seconds ahead of O'Grady, 21 ahead of Steels, and Lance Armstrong, the first leader, has only dropped down to 4th in amongst the sprinters. There's plenty more racing to come. .355 kilometres an hour in the Tour de France yesterday, a record average speed, the first time the riders have ever beaten 50 kilometres an hour for a road race. In fact, that's the speed we're driving along at the moment, to give you some idea. Even in the town of Blois, the riders were exceeding the speed limit, and Mario Cipollini is the man that won the day. Let's go to Gary Imlach now to tell us more about an extraordinary day in the Tour de France.
You know, yesterday's stage was so fast, it was a day early, because for purposes of perfect symmetry, the new record really should have been set here in Amiens, where the old one was.
In 1993, Johan Bruneel clocked just under 49.5 kilometres on the stage from Evreux to Amiens. There was no peloton to help pull him along either, just a cooperative westerly wind at his back.
As the crowd start to applaud him, and then the clock will tell us whether in fact he's done enough to wear the yellow jersey tonight. That's why he's fighting all the way to the line. He crosses the line as the winner.
Funnily enough, the next man in behind him that day was Mario Cipollini, winning the sprint for 2nd place and taking the yellow jersey. Yesterday, the roles were reversed. Like everyone else, Bruneel was behind Cipollini in the support car of the US Postal Team, where he's now manager.
It was logical. It was a very, very strong tailwind, and the records are set to be broken. So yesterday it happened. The good thing of the part is that it was broken by Cipollini. When I set the record, he was 2nd, so I'm not there anymore now. He has the record now.
And as it turned out, he'd set it despite the weight of a huge chip on his shoulder. 32 years old and in the final year of a lucrative contract with Seiko, Mario revealed after the stage that he'd been unable to agree terms with his old team for next season.
Ma è la sensazione quando hai magari un bel Mercedes però 6.000 di cilindrata, è uscito il modello nuovo e la gente magari opta per il modello nuovo che ha sicuramente caratteristiche inferiori al vecchio modello.
Of course, even an old Mercedes will still leave a field of Ford Escort standing, as Mario's already demonstrated this year with 4 stage wins in the Giro d'Italia to bring his total to a record 29. Lampre and Cofidis are rumoured to be among the teams willing to offer the old clothes horse a costume change for next season, with colour scheme probably just behind cash and length of contract as a deciding factor. In the meantime, 2 big questions remain. Does having a picture of Pamela Anderson on your handlebars qualify as an artificial stimulant? And the obvious follow-up question that he no doubt gets asked at home.
Mario, perché non hai una fotografia della moglie sul suo manubrio?
Ma mia moglie me la ricordo bene anche senza dover fare le foto.
Now, can he do it? A breakaway of 10 riders has been caught after a long move, but it came to nothing. Now we're going down to another sprint finish, Paul.
On the front again, Cantilla Toller. They want to get it together for Nicola Minali, but always the white jersey of the Australian champion, Henk Vogels, is there. He's trying to get a stage win as well for Stuart O'Grady, who's been very consistent. Frances de Jure right in the middle, picking it up. That's Christophe Bassin, but right behind him, the 3 red and white jerseys of the Psycho Cannondale team, and that's Mario Cipollini's boys.
Well, Cipollini's tail is really up now after he got his first win yesterday. Once this man gets confidence, he's very difficult to dislodge. Everybody seems to be looking for the wheel of Mario Cipollini, and that's the one to follow now. Again, the last lead out from Fagnini now as he goes as fast as he can. Cipollini just sits there as cool as you like, Lars. Mikkelsen tries to challenge as well. Zabel again just off to our left. There was a nasty switch on the right-hand side there. Cipollini wasn't involved, though, as he comes clear now, launched into space. On the far left, Zabel has his best chance ever, though. Zabel goes for it now. Cipollini, and coming is Tom Steels. Steels comes past Zabel, but on the line, Cipollini makes it 2 in a row, and right behind him was Tom Steels. What a finish again.
Unbelievable. Super Mario, he's pretty happy with that. Everyone said he'd lost his speed, but look at this. He sees the sprint on the right-hand side. It comes from Eric Zabel, and he realises that's the moment he has to move. He kicks it in. He's got the big gear going. Gian Matteo Fagnini sits up and lets him go by. And Mario Cipollini, Phil, he's come back to the Super Mario he was before. And I tell you what, he loves to look over his shoulder to see how far behind him everybody was in the sprint.
Well, Zabel just went too soon. It looked as though he had the speed, but he faded, and then when he faded, Cipollini won, and coming in there in 3rd place, the yellow jersey of Jan Kursipuu. So he gets a useful few seconds bonus as well, behind Cipollini and Steels. Robbie McEwen not quite there yet, 4th place for him. Zabel faded to 5th. So 2 out of 2 for Cipollini. He's now looking at the possible equaling of Bartoli's record of 51 years ago, but no change overall. Kursipuu 17 seconds ahead of Steels, 24 on O'Grady, and 32 on Lance Armstrong. The Tour de France reached the Somme on the beauty of the Picardy yesterday. Playboy Italian Mario Cipollini started his day in beach mode, and then he finished it in full flight to take his 2nd win in a row. 2 days ago, the star sprinter was Tom Steels, and Super Mario was anything but. Now, having won the fastest stage ever in a Tour de France on Wednesday, Cipollini has his sights on Gino Bartoli's 51-year-old record of 3 wins in a row. It could happen today. Well, you just can't suppress Mario Cipollini, and if things go well for him tonight, he could be in the leader's yellow jersey too. He's now the 2nd rider this week to have a shot at Gino Bartoli's 1948 record of 3 stage wins in a row. Here's Gary Imlach now to look at the opportunity for Big Mario to put his name in the record books for the 2nd time this week.
Mario has never actually finished a Tour and has never won a stage past the traditional sprinters' territory of the first week. However, he is the best sprinter of his generation, and a win today would put him alongside one of Italy's greatest cycling heroes. As soon as yesterday's stage was over, he was already thinking about it.
Sarebbe una bella cosa fare 3 vittorie consecutive. Mi sembra che sia già qualche anno fa che non avviene, perciò sono uno che è adatto a battere il record, e speriamo che questa sia una cosa possibile.
Actually, Cippo already has a hat-trick of sorts in the bag, because this is the 3rd year running that he's scored consecutive wins. In '97, he took stages 1 and 2 before Eric Zabel beat him on an uphill finish in Plumelec. Last year, it was stages 5 and 6, which turned out to be bad timing, because stage 7 was a time trial, where he was never really likely to challenge for the win. This year could be his best ever chance. Mind you, if he's feeling the pressure, he's certainly not showing it. Chippo spent most of yesterday working on his tan lines and reenacting his favourite episodes of Benny Hill. When it comes to the crucial last kilometre though, he's all business, marshalling his lead-out men from behind to make sure he's in the perfect position when it matters.
Però un input ci vuole dalle spalle, è soltanto il fatto di riuscire a capire se sono a ruota. Io chiamo Fagnini, Fagnini chiama Mario e quello è il momento che siamo tutti in linea e lì possiamo partire. Diciamo che questo è un meccanismo che non serve provarlo perché ormai da anni che lo facciamo, è una cosa come le triangolazioni tra i calciatori.
If the Saeco midfield can do their job and spring the offside trap today, the big man should have a clear run at goal. There's no uphill finish like there was in '97 when Eric Zabel beat him just a 2-kilometre home straight. This finish could have been tailor-made for Chippo in Milan and couriered out specially for the occasion.
Indeed it could, Gary. Well, they're rolling away again. 171 kilometres now from Amiens to Maubeuge, and Cipollini is aiming for that 51-year-old record of Gino Barti, at least to equal the great Italian maestro.
Quite a few riders in the field could challenge him. Jans Verrada, who at the moment rides for Lampre, his team are leading out right on the front. In the second position there is Mariano Piccoli. In fourth position is Jans Verrada. Eric Zabel also would like to prevent Cipollini from winning, Phil, and Eric Zabel is right in there at the moment.
And he'd love to win right now. Piccolino in that polka dot jersey. He's led from day one so far as he heads towards the first mountains of the Alps, but the sprinters are getting their turn again here now. Watch out for Cipollini. He's not in evidence yet as they come towards the line now. There's Cipollini again behind his lead-out man, but all of the boys here on the Lampre team moving over now as again Fagnini, third day running, is making a run at the line here with Cipollini on his wheel. The yellow jersey of Curtipu is still in there. 6-second time bonus out on the course for him today. Tom Steels, though, has swung right across the course there to grab the back wheel of Cipollini. He's got the back wheel, and Steels is coming over on Cipollini. Shoulder to shoulder, Steels on the line, but I'm not so sure the judges will like that, Paul. It looked a little bit shaky.
A lot of riders diving across the road. The thing is, when you're in a sprint like this, you're looking for the slipstream of the wheel in front. This is the infringement the judges are going to look at, Phil. The green jersey moving across there, just hitting the shoulders of Jans Verrada. So Verrada keeping him upright, but that's why Steels went. He wanted to get onto the wheel of Mario Cipollini. Once he got in there, he got a breather for a fraction of a second and then moves alongside and kicks with that incredible turn of speed he's got in the last 50 metres and moves forward, comes up alongside Cipollini, puts his arm onto Cipollini as well, but in the lunge for the line, there's no problem there. He's first over it, but the judges are discussing it right now.
Well, let's have another look from the front here. A little bit of a clash of elbows there. Nothing wrong with that, but already Verrada has sat up out of it. A little bit of a wry smile on his face as over the line first comes Tom Steels in green, Cipollini second, and third over the line again is Eric Zabel with the yellow jersey there of Jan Curtipu just behind. Tom Steels has been called onto the podium by the race organisation, but almost at the same time as he takes the applause of the crowd here. The referees are saying he has been disqualified from first place and placed to the back of the field for his dangerous sprinting. So, in fact, Cipollini is the stage winner. He's already left the area, by the way, but there is confirmation of the result. Cipollini wins ahead of Zabel, Curtipu and Verrada. So Curtipu gets another valuable third-place sprint bonus. Tom Steels at the back of the pack, 170 seconds, so that's pretty low. And so overall now there will be an increase in the leadership of Jan Curtipu, who'll now lead the Tour by 26 seconds ahead of Cipollini. Tom Steels is third and O'Grady there at 38 seconds. Armstrong losing a bit in the time bonuses here now. He is down to sixth place, 46 seconds off the pace. He won't be too worried about that, I shouldn't think. No, perhaps not, but Mario Cipollini, Paul, if he can win this one over 227 kilometres, he'll become the first man in 69 years, since Charles Pélissier, in fact, to win 4 stages straight.
And the sprinters certainly want to have their day, because today is the last flat stage before the time trial and then 2 very big mountain stages, and that's when the sprinters of this year's Tour de France are going to have to take a back seat.
US Postal Boys, evidence at the front. There's Tom Steels chatting with Mario Cipollini. The strange thing was the riders didn't complain about the sprinting of Tom Steels yesterday, and I think perhaps it was a rather hard decision by the race referees.
It's always a difficult time, a sprint, because you only have an eye of what's in front of you. You don't think about what's happening towards the side. You just go for the wheel and you go for the gap. And when you're a sprinter like that, Phil, you just have to take the chance when it comes.
So 20 kilometres now wind today from the northeast, and the riders themselves again making good time. This tour continues on at record-breaking speed. We've seen that wonderful stage of over 50 kilometres now, won by Cipollini. Now here's a man, records falling in his first week, and they're all going the way of the man in red, and he could well do it again now.
A late attack from Rabobank there, but it's not going anywhere at all. It's again going to be the big lead out on the front. Stefan Weissermann from Team Telecom. Behind him, Gian Matteo Fanini. And then in third place, that's Mario Cipollini looking for the big record.
Well, this again is Stefan Weissermann, who is trying to lead out his man Erik Zabel, who's in green. Zabel's fourth wheel around the corner. He just can't seem to get it quite right, you know, and he's trying to equal the stage win record of 8 by Rudi Altig for Germany. And again, he's a little bit away from it now. Weissermann once more doesn't realise it. He's inexperienced, perhaps in his first tour. Leading out the wrong man, leading out Fanini. Fanini now once more launching the missile at the finish, as again he waits until the last possible moment. Cipollini, remember, he's aiming now at a 69-year-old record. Cipollini's gone, and what's happened to Zabel? Lost both his pedals at the same time, and how he's kept that bike upright, I don't know, but he's given a clear run now to Cipollini. He's done it 4 in a row for Mario Cipollini, but I think I'd like to see what happened to Erik Zabel again there, Paul.
That was unbelievable. Both his feet came out of the pedals at the same time. I really don't know how he stayed upright, but this is the kick. In fact, you can see both legs came out. They went behind him. He managed to pull them up, but he never let go of the handlebars, and that's how he managed to control the machine. But that had nothing to do with the win of Mario Cipollini, because Cipollini was already in the lead, almost a length ahead of Stuart O'Grady, and once he'd got the chance of that great record, he just put his head down and went to the line. O'Grady had to be happy with second.
Yes, poor old Stuart, but at least they all got out of the way of potential crash there from Erik Zabel, as this man just looks over his shoulder, makes it look so easy. He's now got 4 wins straight, and he's also got the fastest stage ever of the Tour this week. Cipollini then winning ahead of O'Grady and Kirsipuu. Overall, Cipollini still 14 seconds off yellow.
This is the launch pad of the individual time trial at the Tour de France. For many of the lesser riders, there's always a sensation of fear when you come in there, because you're looking elimination in the face. But for the big names, it's the first time in a week that they have to come out and really put their cards on the table, because at the end of the individual time trial that we get an idea of just exactly who's going to win the Tour de France. That's why they call it the race of truth.
And this man who's surprised at the Puy de Fou in the prologue is at it again here, because his checks are very, very quick at every mark we go through, Paul. He is rewriting the time checkbook. But this accident out on the course, and this is Bobby Julich. We've heard about it, now we can get a look at it. Paul Julich has misjudged his right-hander and has gone down very, very badly indeed.
This is one of the most dangerous parts of the course, but Armstrong has ridden by him. Armstrong himself realizing that he is doing great times out on the course. Boardman set the early times, but now Armstrong goes through here after 33 kilometres with the best time covered.
And this is what is happening. Lance Armstrong, it's all coming together again, just like it did on the Puy de Fou. This is a man who really has learned to time trial and is beginning to embarrass everybody, especially the rider in front of him here, because he's putting back man after man. This looks like George Hincapie.
Yeah, his teammate Abraham Alana looks as if he's had a problem going around one of the corners there. He's back up on his machine. He's getting pushed by one of the spectators at the side of the road, and he must have lost it in that corner, Phil.
Well, I think it's a left-hand corner. He's just got... Oh, we can have a look at it again here now. It's a left-hand corner, completely out of control. There's no way he was going anywhere. He locks up his back wheel. Well, thank heavens there was a straw bale there, but that's called a headstand in front of the public, and the world champion is going to be embarrassed about that, because, in fact, Armstrong is coming right up behind him.
Armstrong is riding an incredible race, starting 2 minutes behind the world champion at the time trial. He's already got him in sight, and this is going to be a double blow, really, to Abraham Olano, the world champion at this discipline.
Well, you know, Abraham Olano has never been caught as a professional in a time trial before, and all that is about to change, and Armstrong is the man to do it. Is there no end to this rider this year, because Armstrong just can do absolutely nothing wrong?
Well, the last time I saw him ride a time trial like this, Phil, was 1996, the Tour du Pont, which he absolutely dominated. He won that time trial stage there at over 32 miles an hour. But he has changed. His position on the machine has changed. He's got a very aerodynamic helmet. But the important thing is the speed at which he's pedaling. Look at that cadence. It's up around 100 RPM.
Well, since his cancer therapy and his chemotherapy, he has lost an awful lot of weight in his training, in his comeback. Those that thought after his Paris-Nice race last year that he was going home for good were proved absolutely wrong. This man has waited to come to the Tour de France this year. He's come, and he's come in the biggest way you could imagine. Armstrong is now racing to the best time here as we go back to the finish. Dufault and Zuller is the best time in. We didn't see him finish, but Dufault now 1:12, only 6th for him.
This is great. Look at this. This is Armstrong catching a man who started 6 minutes in front of him. This is the Belgian sprinter Tom Steels, and he's going to get a major shock. Abraham Olano, Phil, is fighting to try and stay in contact.
Well, if anything, he's gone slightly better since Armstrong caught him. That might be a little bit of pride there, but he's tried to lift his race. This is Tom Steels now as Armstrong continues, and Steels has got no chance here of keeping up, I don't think.
Well, I have to say, Phil, I think, in fact, Armstrong is weakening over the last 10 kilometres of this course because he's caught all of the other riders in front of him. He's dropped them very easily, but now Tom Steels, who is not riding a great time trial, has managed to stay in contact with Armstrong. But look at this time by Moreau.
Well, again, Christophe Moreau has shown us what a great time trial rider he is, and he's still surviving up near the top of the leaderboard too, and this will keep him there. He's only a bit slower than Alex Zuller, second at the moment, and 1 minute 6 seconds off the leaderboard. Tom Steele still trying to keep Lance Armstrong in sight at 1 kilometre to go.
Armstrong has set the fastest times at every time check so far, Phil, and some of them have been incredible times. He was almost a minute faster than Alex Zuller, and now he's coming up to the line, and look at that, he's almost a minute faster on the finish line as well.
Well, we are going to see a second stage win here, and the second time trial win for Lance Armstrong, and it could well be a yellow jersey as well. Armstrong 1:8:36, an incredible time. Lance Armstrong has reclaimed the maillot jaune that he won at the Puy de Fou, and you can say that before the arrival of Abraham Olano, who has been caught for 2 minutes by Armstrong and is just trying to salvage a reasonable time, and it will be around 5th overall on the day. 1:10:58 and 5th for Olano.
Unbelievable. Olano looked fantastic in the first kilometres of this time trial. I thought he looked good, but he could do nothing against the onslaught of Lance Armstrong. This man has ridden the time trial at almost exactly the same speed as he rode the opening prologue. That announces it's going to be a pretty impressive ride when we go into the mountains after the rest day.
Well, can he continue? This is unbelievable here. Lance Armstrong, though, the winner of the time trial by almost a minute over Alex Zuller. Moreau taking third, but over 2 minutes off the pace. And Olano even further back. Tyler Hamilton, another good time trial by him at 3:31, although he won't give his all today because he knows now he's going to have to work for Lance Armstrong in the overall race for yellow. Chris Boardman, a little bit off the pace there, 6th for him. So the yellow jersey back on the shoulders of Lance Armstrong 1 week into the Tour de France. It's an awful long way to go yet, but look at these gaps now. These are sensational time gaps. 2:20 on Christophe Moreau, 2:33 on Olano, 3:25 on O'Grady. The big question is, can his team now support him for 2 weeks of the Tour de France and keep him in yellow? It's going to take an awful lot of doing, and the pressure's on them. Hello and welcome to Tour Plus. Well, after 1,468 kilometres and 9 days of racing, the Tour de France has reached the mountains. For some, they are high roads to conquer and bring joy and celebration and the happiest of memories. For others, they bring opposite emotions of pain, sadness and defeat. Since the Puy de Fou, this race has been a fairy tale for Lance Armstrong. Now, having excelled on the flat, does he fear the 2 days ahead?
Coming into the Tour, I thought, and my coaches and the people on the team thought that my strength in the Tour would be my climbing and not my time trial. And so if that holds true, then I might be able to hold on.
So Armstrong seems ready and confident. This is the overall situation this morning. He leads Christophe Moreau by 2 minutes 20 seconds and Abraham Olano by 2:33. Stuart O'Grady, the Australian, also doing well in 4th. Of the others who should look forward to today, Pavel Tonkov is 13th and 5 minutes 10 seconds back. Alex Zuller, after a good time trial, is creeping back at 7:08. And Chris Boardman, he'll have a tough day today, but he's still riding the Tour in 123rd position. And a massive crowd now, the riders having flown overnight some 500 kilometres down to the start here. And now it's a day on as they face up to 213 kilometres of alpine climbing. And not coming on the aeroplane trip are Jimmy Casper and Nicola Manali, two sprinters who've decided to stay up north as the riders now make their way towards the high mountains of the Tour. 15 kilometres now, a slight wind today, and it's going to be warm, but rain is threatened.
28 degrees maximum in the valleys, but it will be very cold over the summits. And already, Phil, the American flag making its appearance on the Tour de France here. Lance has got an awful lot of supporters for his yellow jersey.
Well, Lance said the jersey was kept warm for the next rider. That's what he said when he gave it to Kirsipuu, but I bet he didn't believe Kirsipuu would give it back to him. This is Konishev now towards the top of the Col de Marais. 15 kilometres covered, and Konishev gets the points ahead of Mariano Piccoli and Lilian Le Breton. Now, the next climb coming at 38.5 kilometres, the Col de Tamier.
Again, Mariano Piccoli, the leader of the King of the Mountains competition. He's been fantastic over the first week of the Tour, Phil, and he's trying to build up as big a lead as possible to try and hold on to that jersey. But over the big mountains, he will certainly get challenged.
Well, this is the 12-kilometre or 7-mile climb now of the Col de Telegraph. It takes the riders up to 1,566 metres. 31st time the riders have come up here now as they make their way towards the summit. Arrieta has got clear of the field, and as you can see now, as we start on what is the stepping stone to the Galibier, the rain has also started here.
Richard Virenque went across in 6th place there, 5.5 minutes behind. But what's happening now, Phil, is the teams of Kelme and the teams of Ernesto are launching riders up the road because this is the strategy. They're certainly going to try and place an attack on the lead of Armstrong on here, the slopes of the Galibier.
Well, this is the first real big test for Lance Armstrong now. I know he's seen all of these roads in training. He's prepared for the mountains of the Tour de France. His time trialling has surprised him a little bit, but the big test now is, will he survive the attacks from the Spaniards? Because it's been reported all of the Spanish teams are going to attack him today.
Well, this is Joaquim Castelblanco from Kelme. He's gone out of the front of this very small group. And I have to say one thing, Phil. US Postal Service have done a fantastic job today looking after Lance Armstrong. On the front here is Tyler Hamilton. Following him is Kevin Livingston. These two guys have certainly got to ride their hearts out today for Lance Armstrong to defend him. And one thing today that Armstrong must be thinking about, that unfortunate abandon of the man Jonathan Vaughters, because he would have been fantastic in the climbs.
The same thought was going through my mind there, Paul, but these two riders are prepared now to give their all to their new leader in Lance Armstrong. He has brought so much out of his team because of his strength, but now the Kelme boys are attacking, and this is what we expected.
Well, this is Fernando Escartin. They said they wanted to attack Armstrong in the mountains. Armstrong felt confident he must respond to these attacks. But for the moment, Phil, he hasn't got out of the saddle. He's staying in the slipstream of his two leaders. Those two men in front of him who are taking him up the climb. Richard Virenque now, the Polte rider, he's attacking to get across. He realises this is a great chance to try and put the yellow jersey into difficulty.
Well, this is a little bit of a decision time now for Lance, because he's got to know when to panic and when not to panic. He might be wise to hold off for as long as he can, just to make sure that these attacks are going to go somewhere. He's allowing riders to spring clear. This is Angelo Casero who's going clear, and champion of Spain. And as the Spanish riders get up and start mixing it together here, this is going to be a tough one. Escartin, he's got to make his move early. Remember, we're racing towards Italy today. We expect to see the Italians play their part as well. Here's Virenque.
Virenque, he was only brought into the Tour de France at the very last minute, but he's trying to redeem himself. He's trying to prove that he is still a competitive rider. Here we're looking here at Manuel Beltran, number 162, and the man, in fact, Escartin, who Lance Armstrong really believes is his biggest danger, and he's got Castelblanco with him. Armstrong has not responded, but you can see what's happened here because Kevin Livingston has picked up the pace. The only man they've really got left with them now is Alex Zuller, and he's blowing that group to pieces.
One by one, the US Postal boys are giving their 110% and falling away. There's only one left with Lance Armstrong now, and that's Kevin Livingstone. Livingstone himself is going to give everything he can to the cause here. Armstrong is still waiting. Remember, this is a real tough day today, and it finishes up the mountain of Sestriere as well. After the Col de Galibier, we've got the Col de Montgenèvre, and we're getting high in the sky now, and conditions are pretty cool and miserable up here.
These are conditions just like last year when Marco Pantani jumped away from Jan Ullrich and blew the Tour de France upside down. At the end of the day, Jan Ullrich ended up losing more than 9 minutes to the little Spaniard and the little Italian, and that day, in fact, Marco Pantani put the yellow jersey on his shoulders and took them all the way to Paris. And it was on that day that the people thought that the Tour de France was over, because Jan Ullrich was already installed at the top of the leaderboard.
Well, the rain is becoming more and more torrential, and where we are at Sestriere, it is absolutely coming down in buckets at the moment, and we're a couple of mountains away from these riders. The Kelme boys now, this was a planned attack, Paul, the way they've done one-on-one all day, but this is the serious one now because Escartine is here.
Superb strategy. They're a great team when it comes to the mountains, Kelme. They've been in the professional peloton for 20 years, and they went out with that plan. They launched their man Castelblanco off the front there, and Escartine came up to him, and then they were going to work together. Arrieta is still leading the race. He's a long way up the road, but he's losing massive time. He started this climb, Phil, with 5.5 minutes advantage over the main field, and the last time check we had was in fact only 3.
Well, we're on the Galibier now, and it should be enough to see him first over the top, but I really feel that this man Arrieta is out to soften them up for Alex Zülle further back. This is Casero now, and look at this, Armstrong is riding back up to them.
The sun has come out for Lance Armstrong to shine on him, because they didn't panic at all, US Postal. They waited until they got to the summit of the climb, and then they opened up the gas a little bit. Kevin Livingstone has done a remarkable job for Armstrong, and Virenque is accelerating to try and get himself some points in the King of the Mountains competition, but they are going to go to Arrieta, who will go over the top in first position here.
Indeed he will, and it is Virenque who's chasing him. His colours do look alike with Casero at the moment with his Polti colours, but this man is going to stop and pull on his rain cape. Well, while he does, we can join Gary Imlach.
We haven't seen Mario Cipollini today, which is no surprise on a mountain stage, but it's not because he's gone home, which, if you'll remember, was originally the plan after the time trial in Metz. Apparently, though, Mario decided, what with his historic 4 consecutive stage wins and all, he was obliged to ride the Tour's one Italian stage, Per la Gente, for the people. And just so that La Gente would recognise him this morning, he turned up dressed as Julius Caesar, which naturally was an honour for Caesar. The excuse, not that he really needed one, was the 2099th anniversary of Caesar's birth. Either that, or Chippo just wanted to force the Tour organisers to fine him for a breach of the clothing regulations like they do every year. Well, the organisers obliged and slapped him with a penalty of 6,000 Swiss francs, which is about £3,000 sterling. And lighter in the pocket, but apparently weighed down by history, Chippo set off and has been languishing at the back of the field all day. And for those of you sitting at home thinking things couldn't get much more ludicrous on the equipment front this side of a pair of Gucci cycling shoes, let me present to you, if I can get one out of the bag, the Gucci cycling shoe. £175 at all Bond Street's finest cycling establishments, and I dare you to wear a pair on your next Sunday morning club ride.
Thanks, Gary. I'll send you my address. Right, back to the race now as we come up towards the top of the Col de Galibier, climbed for the 50th time in Tour history today. Richard Virenque is there too, and looking a little bit scratchy. He's trying to get the points as he comes clear to take second place over the top from Dufault, who's wearing that illegal racing strip for which it's cost him a few bob today.
It certainly has, but they're not too worried about that at the moment. What they're worried about is getting themselves down off the Col de Galibier. Jose Luis Arrieta was first over the top, but Phil, further down the climb, Abraham Olano is having a serious problem.
Well, Olano always seems to have a problem with the Tour de France. His best finish is 4th, and again dropped on the climb. It all started to go wrong on the Col de Telegraph for him, and he's now going over the top a long way behind here. There's the whole field finding the weather not at all good, as it so often is on the first day in the mountains.
Stefano Gazzelli, the Mercatone Uno rider, on the front there. Alongside him, Giuseppe Guerini and Vladimiro Belli. But I have to say, Christophe Moreau, the Festina rider there, is doing a fantastic ride. He was currently 2nd overall in the standings, and if he recovers on the descent, he may well keep that place till tomorrow.
Well, good for him. It's a big test for him today in the mountains, but so far, Lance Armstrong and what's left of his team, which is only one rider, and that is Kevin Livingstone, has come up with the answers to the Spanish riders who have attacked really since the mountains began. This rider, Richard Virenque, again now, who hasn't taken part in the mountains competition until today, and that's what his tactic normally is. Remember, he's won it 4 times in the last 5 years, and he was thrown out of the Tour last year as the linkage with the Festina doping system. Now, as we start on to the next climb of the day here, up the climb of Mont Genèvre, this is the stepping stone to Sestriere. The top of this climb takes us into Italy, and a general regrouping. They're only 44 seconds back now.
And a lot of big riders in that group. Pavel Tonkov, Abraham Alano, they're all trying to get themselves back up to the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong. In fact, both Kevin Livingston and Tyler Hamilton are in the second group on the road. So that leading group of riders, in fact, Lance Armstrong is on his own. And this is when the attacks are certain to come from Escartine and Zuller, who are on the front of the group at the moment.
Well, the field regrouped, a front group of some 9 riders getting together on the descent of the Galibier down into Briançon. And now on this climb here, Armstrong looks to be looking very, very good indeed here. We've got Casero and Virenque both together, and sitting there at the back is Contreras.
Moving into that group as well is Ivan Gotti, the winner of the Tour of Italy this year. Obviously wants to ride well on the slopes of Sestriere, but this is a very select group of riders. These are the riders who at the end of 3 weeks are going to be fighting it out for the overall win at the Tour de France. On the back there, Contreras, he's replaced the Kelme rider Castelblanco in the front of this group, but in second position there is Fernando Escartine, the man who really launched a searing attack on the slopes of the Galibier. In third place, 61, is Ivan Gotti, but I reckon today he's doing a fair amount of work for Richard Virenque, who's really moving up the rankings in the King of the Mountains competition.
Well, this is Escartine and Beltran at the front now. Well, I don't know if you caught a glimpse then of Armstrong, Paul. He looks so relaxed sitting there watching everybody, rightly so. It's not up to him to attack now. He just watches everybody making the moves. He's built the sort of lead we've seen from Miguel Indurain and Bernard Hinault in the recent past history of the Tour de France. Look at this now. Alano goes under, and he's a long way back.
He really is having a hard time. This guy, I felt this year, had a serious crack at the Tour de France, but every time we go into the big mountains, he seems to come under pressure. He's got David Echavarria with him right on the front there, really helping him out. And the other man in the group there with him as well is Perez Rodriguez, who's doing a pretty good job looking after him.
But right now it's Manuel Beltran doing a pretty good job nursing this group with his team captain in. Alex Zuller sat near the back. Beltran brought in the days of Miguel Indurain, now having to nurse, hopefully to victory, Alex Zuller, who has joined the Banesto team this year. There he is. Doesn't look as though he's enjoying it too much. He's had a terrible tour so far. He's still lost 6 minutes in the Passage du Gois, and of course he's also lost time on both time trials to Armstrong.
34th overall at the start of this morning, but he's going to climb up a fair way in the rankings, Phil. But further back in the race at the moment, Jan Kirsipou, the man who led this race for almost the whole of the first week, is in serious difficulty. Mario Cipollini is in the laughing group. I don't really know why they call it the laughing group, because it's not much fun on a day like this. So is Christophe Renero, the man who was 4th overall in the Tour de France last year. So a lot of big names have got blown out on this first big mountain stage.
Well, this rider in big trouble here because he's over 2 minutes behind that Armstrong group now as they climb on and the roads get a little bit steeper. It is Marcus Serrano who is leading him there, trying to nurse him through. But as we look from the helicopter right up to the top there, that's where the lead group is.
They did an excellent job along the valley road through Briançon. In fact, they pulled back Abraham Alano to within 44 seconds of this leading group with Armstrong in it. But now they've started to climb again. They're losing serious time once again. And the attacks, Phil, are certainly going to come towards the summit of this climb, because from the top of the Col de Montgenèvre, there are 30 kilometers to go to the finish in Sestriere. Half of it downhill, the rest right up to the summit in the ski resort.
And that's all on Italian roads, and this rider now would love to be the winner there at Sestriere, Ivan Gotti of the Polti team, the recent winner of the Giro d'Italia, but some might say by default after the disqualification of Marco Pantani with 2 days to go. But Gotti also smarting after that crash on the Passage du Gois. And same as Zuller, lost over 6 minutes that day. And Armstrong, I think, must feel pretty content with that big margin between the two of them right now.
His face is complete concentration. He doesn't seem worried at all in these mountains. People like Chris Carmichael felt that Armstrong would be stronger in the mountains than in the time trial. Confirmation of the gap back to Abraham Alano's group there, 1 minute and 20 seconds. But the big climbers of the Tour de France here are in this group with Lance Armstrong. 1 kilometre to go to the summit of the Col de Montgenèvre, and he's really doing a great job eliminating one man who he thought was a great challenger, and that's Abraham Alano.
And a rider we thought would have been a challenger too, Alexander Vinokurov, he's been dropped a lot earlier than that today and is a long way behind. Contreras setting the pace now, hoping that Escartin might do something later on. Off to the left there is Dufault in the white jersey instead of the red jersey of Seiko Cannondale. Vironk again just following the wheels and waiting to see that banner and sprint for the King of the Mountains points. There's a huge crowd here now because we're looking down at France, but in the distance is Italy.
Once they go over the summit of this climb, they go through the French border, and then as soon as they begin the descent, they go through the Italian border. And the descent down into the valley below Sestri Airfield is normally a pretty tricky one, but it is still damp down there because of the rain that we've been experiencing throughout most of this afternoon.
And we've had some torrential rain at Sestriere. At the moment, the sun has come out, but here in the Alps, the weather changes so quickly. This is an amazing select group of climbers here now. Beltran has given everything here in the hope that he can soften up the opposition for Alex Zuller. Virenque looking as cool as a cucumber as ever, and the same has to be said of Lance Armstrong. He didn't panic when the attacks came on the Cols de Glibier and the Col de Telegraph. He allowed the moves, he's come back into the action, and now Virenque is going for the King of the Mountains points here. Looks across, Armstrong allows nothing to move.
Armstrong very attentive, just waiting for any acceleration from these climbers. He used his team perfectly as Virenque goes over the top to get maximum points there. He waited until the last possible moment, and then when he had to assume control, he went away on his own and countered all of the moves. He's riding like a real champion, like a real master tactician. That's why he's used his team, and now he has to assume control at the front of the race.
Well, he must have frightened the Spanish climbers here now because they've seen the strength of Armstrong on these mountains today. He's ridden himself right back up to them. He's controlled them. He's alone now, and they've achieved something. At least they've isolated him, but he's proving to have all of the strength so far, and there's only one climb left to come to the finish.
The final climb of the day, and in fact it was on the descent, Phil, that those two riders got clear, but on that descent there were several crashes. One of them was Mario Cipollina, the other was Pavel Tonkov, but this is the most dangerous thing for Lance Armstrong, the attack from Fernando Escartin and Yvon Gotti. These guys surprised Armstrong on the descent, and they're in front by about 25 seconds.
Well, these two took tremendous risks on slippery roads coming down, and the gap just simply opened up between them. There was no real acceleration, they just took risks, and the gap has opened back to the Armstrong group. There's the Armstrong group, and two climbers unusually breaking away going downhill now have the advantage here on the way up to the finish. But this chase group here trying to reorganize itself. There'll be nothing from Contreras now because he's got his man away.
Looks as if Arrieta has disappeared from this group. This is the face of Abraham Olano already on the early slopes. He's trying to ride off the group that he was with. He's limiting his losses today. If he wants to finish in the top three when we get up to Paris, he has to try and make sure he doesn't lose too much time to the other climbers on the mountain passes.
Well, this is Kurt van der Wouwe who's giving the Lotto team some hope that they have finally got themselves a climber on that team. Well, look at that. Armstrong has gone. He must have read our caption. 32 seconds to the two leaders, and he must have realised that is enough. He's now gone. Now, can they answer this one, Paul? Because the acceleration of this man is incredible. He's looking so good.
That was unbelievable. He took a few risks going up through the inside there because somebody could easily have closed the door on him. The reaction came from Contreras to try and pull it back. He's gone round that corner so quickly. He's taken it very wide. Alex Zuller's the man who must respond. 161, the white shirt there on the shoulders of the Banesto rider. He has to try and get up to Armstrong, but Armstrong is flying away.
He's completely broken up that group now. Contreras has tried to go, even though he's been sitting at the back since his team captain went up the road. But I don't think he's got the legs now. I'm not so sure Zuller has either here. Escartin and Gotti are the two riders out in front, but the acceleration of Armstrong is absolutely frightening here. This is the sort of move that you would have seen Eddie Merckx do in his day, and not the sort of move we ever saw Miguel Indurain do.
But look at that time gap. He's already nailed it down to 11 seconds. He's just 11 seconds behind Escartin and Gotti in the space of less than 1 kilometre. He's ripped across that gap, and he's riding a superb race now. But there is a response coming from behind, and that is from Alex Zuller. Zuller realises that this is a dangerous move by Armstrong. There are the two leaders, Escartin in the green. That's Gotti in the yellow and red jersey from the Polti squad. But Armstrong has just ridden across like they were standing still.
Well, Lance Armstrong, who 18 months ago was contemplating a bleak future, never mind riding in the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, this was his big test day today, his next big test, and look how he's answered it. He's come right up to the two climbers. Goodness knows what Escartine thinks now. He's staring at the yellow jersey in the face.
Well, he must have expected to be able to put Lance Armstrong into difficulty today, because Armstrong has not really known as a major climber. This is his first real test as a leader of the Tour de France in the big mountain passes. He was 4th overall last year in the Tour of Spain, and that's when he said it was the first time he felt that he could accompany the big climbers in the big 3-week stage races. Today, he's actually staying with one of the best climbers in the Tour de France, Fernando Escartine.
Well, Escartine withdrew from the Tour last year when lying in 4th place overall because of the Spanish protest. And now this is Zuller. Zuller is trying to get across on his own, so that group has been completely blown apart now. Alex Zuller is having to ride across to join this very elite front group, and I'm not so sure he can make this. We've got 3 up front.
Well, it's amazing to see that Zuller hasn't laid down arms. You know, he had a very hard time after the 3rd day on the Tour de France when he lost over 6 minutes through the Passage au Gois, but he stayed in the bike race, he stayed concentrated. He was 2nd to Armstrong in that time trial around Metz, and now he's trying to keep himself in the overall rankings, because whatever happens, even though he's so far down, Phil, he's climbing up the standings today. Gotti now launching an attack. He's put Escartine into difficulty. And look at that, how Armstrong responded. He just moved up alongside Gotti to say, don't worry about it, sunshine, I'm in pretty good shape today.
Well, around this corner here now, they might be able to see the chalets of Sestriere. This has been a good recovery by the Banesto rider. Zuller is inch by inch coming back up alongside these 3 front runners. So that leading group of 9 is now a very select front group of 4. Well, almost anyway.
Gotti again trying to put the others into difficulty. They've looked over the shoulders and seen the return of Alex Zuller. But this is a great ride. This is what a champion is all about. It's all about not panicking when you're put into difficulty on a climb, finding your rhythm and riding yourself back into the bike race. Alex Zuller has done exactly that. He couldn't respond to that first attack of Lance Armstrong's, but once he got himself into his own rhythm, a good climbing rhythm, he's pulled himself back up to the leaders. Armstrong now taking up 1st position on the road.
Well, that's what the man in the yellow jersey should do, is show everybody else who's boss. This has been a fantastic day of riding for Armstrong so far. Never panicked early on. He's joined the front line of action and now dictating the pace, and we're heading up towards the finish. Armstrong really doesn't have to ride at the front now, because it's the other 3 who should attack him, but instead he's just driving this pace on. I do believe he's trying to crack Gotti.
Gotti was talking to his team manager there, just looking across at the Polti team car, just having a few words to say. Sorry, sunshine, he said, I can't attack. I'm just happy to stay here on the wheel of Lance Armstrong. His face is a picture of concentration. He's not showing any emotion at all. He's getting on with the job in hand. He's concentrated on getting those pedals round as quickly as possible. And again, Phil, he's reminding me very much of Miguel Indurain, the way he's pedaling. There's Johan Brunel coming up alongside in the US Postal team car. Few words with Lance Armstrong. Let's not forget, Johan Brunel has been a great tactician over the first week of this tour.
But really, he's got to be surprised by the riding of Armstrong, and he must be worried too that this man is giving away too much energy with the Pyrenees still to come and the final time trial. He's looking at 2 weeks in yellow at this point. And now look at him, he's lifted the pace again. Gotti is in trouble, and Escartine isn't looking too happy either.
Gotti couldn't stay on the wheel of Lance Armstrong, and it was up to Fernando Escartine to respond. He's losing 2 or 3 bike lengths there, but that's not a problem. He's going to close it down on Lance Armstrong because he is a fantastic climber. But in fact, Armstrong looking over his shoulder, he's seen he's got the gap and he's going to keep going.
I think you're absolutely right, and in fact Armstrong here is just lifting his pace, and he's just riding 3 of the finest climbers in the world off his wheel, and he's jumped out of the saddle. He's suddenly accelerated, and look at the gap.
Well, he couldn't believe it. He looked over his shoulder and saw that he had a gap. He could see that they weren't responding to him. And that's when he got out of the saddle. That's when the attack came. He already had 10 lengths advantage. This is phenomenal. He's out of the saddle, pushing it home now. And this is when he's really got to stick the knife into the wound and go for it to the summit of this climb. The first day in the mountains come down with a big hammer on the head of the climbers.
Well, Armstrong came to the Tour de France as an outsider, possibly to finish well up. But now he really is looking like the possible winner of the Tour de France here. He's won both time trials. He's now heading up to a likely victory here at Sestriere. If you can win the time trials and you win the mountains, well, there's not much left but to win the Tour de France. And here's Sestriere. There's the finishing line up there. He has ridden these riders off his wheel. Further down now, Richard Virenque, the new leader in the King of the Mountains, riding with Contreras.
Armstrong is looking very controlled. He's not in any difficulty at all at the moment, Phil, and it's quite remarkable to think that he's turning Sestriere into Beech Mountain. Beech Mountain, the mountaintop finish where he won in the Tour du Pont back in 1996, and today he's really riding away from the best in the world at the Tour de France. And when you think what he was told in 1996, it's remarkable to see not only him wearing the yellow jersey, but actually trouncing the field at the Tour de France.
Well, it wasn't far from Beech Mountain, North Carolina, in Boone, where Lance Armstrong found himself last year after going home from Paris-Nice, and he's come back. He came back and he finished 4th in the Tour of Spain, 4th in the World Time Trial Championship, 4th in the World Road Race, and that surely gave him the confidence that he could ride a great Tour de France. His whole season has been focused on it, and now Zuller is seemingly the only man between him and victory in Paris, because here he goes. He's dropped the other two and he's trying to reach Lance for the second time on this climb.
Unbelievable. Alex Zuller will not give up. He will not lie down at the side of the road. He realizes he has to try and keep himself in the bike race. Anything can happen to Lance Armstrong over the next couple of weeks, so he has to keep riding hard. But Armstrong is opening up the gap right now. It's 30 seconds from Armstrong back to Zuller, and this is a phenomenal ride. We always said that the stage to Sestriere was going to be an epic ride, and it is an epic performance here by Lance Armstrong after winning the time trial and coming back on the first day in the mountains with the yellow jersey and riding so dominantly. I can't remember the last time I saw a yellow jersey ride like that.
Well, this man is now proving to be quite unbelievable here, because he's broken clear of everybody. He's eliminated them one by one on the mountains of the Alps today, over some of the classic mountains of this race. He's now in the last kilometre of 213.5 kilometres today, and he could well now be the winner at Sestriere. I do not see anybody coming back. He's 25 seconds ahead of Alex Zuller.
And the most important thing for Armstrong today is he's opening up time gaps again on every one of his challenges. Not only did he put a big time gap between himself and them on the time trial stage, but he's doing it in the mountains as well. And that's what you need to do if you're going to go forward and win the Tour de France. But Armstrong is concentrated now. It's exactly the same face he had in the time trial just a couple of days ago, Phil. He's riding up to the summit of this mountain all on his own, no help from anyone, as quickly as he can.
He knows that with every turn of those pedals, he is going to an even bigger lead in the Tour de France, because Christophe Moreau has been dropped and is minutes behind now. Alano, who was 3rd overall, is also behind and losing, ending up to 4 minutes. So this has been an incredible ride by him. And Alex Zuller, who lost 6 minutes on day 2 of the Tour, is likely to be right up in the overall classification tonight. That's where we are, right on the far right of our picture. And this man, Lance Armstrong from Texas, is going to win a mountain stage. And Paul, even in the great days of Miguel Indurain, he only ever won the time trials.
That was all Miguel did. He planned his strategy to be on the time trials and just to survive in the mountains. He never went out with a real fist to try and take the mountain stages like this. Armstrong is riding a phenomenal race here. He rode sensibly over the first climbs of the day. He was very good on the Col de Galibier when he used his team. He never panicked when the climbers started to attack him. But once he was isolated at the bottom of Sestriere, he looked at the other climbers and he didn't even attack them, Phil. That's the amazing thing. He just blew them off his wheel.
Absolutely. Well, after his time trials, everybody said, oh yes, but how about the mountains? Well, here's the answer now, because Armstrong has ridden the first day in the mountains better than anyone else. His team were absolutely brilliant at the start. They nursed him and kept him as fresh as possible. He could handle the finish himself, as he's now proving. The finishing line is just up the road.
His last time check we got to Alex Zuller, who's second on the road at the moment, is 45 seconds. So Armstrong is opening up serious gaps. Very shortly he will get right into the town of Sestriere, and for the first time since the Valley, the road will flatten out a little bit and he will get a chance to breathe a little bit more freely, because then he will know that he's going to get the stage victory and increase his lead. The stars and stripes, they're all over France and Italy now, Phil, because this man is starting to get himself a pretty serious following.
But it's a long time since it flew for the leader on the yellow jersey of the Tour de France, and now it's flying for Lance Armstrong. This incredible fairy tale for him as he now pounds the road of Sestriere to an increase in his overall lead in the Tour de France. Armstrong has ridden brilliantly as he comes up towards the line. The rain has started to come down again. It's been off, on, off all day, but Lance Armstrong isn't going to worry about this because his day is almost done as he races into the Italian village of Sestriere, where some of the great champions have won here in the past. But this man has got to be one of the greatest now. He looks over his shoulder. He will see no one. Zuller is around about 30 seconds behind. He does up the zip on his maillot jaune, and he's going to feel very safe tonight, even though we have a really tough day to Alpe d'Huez tomorrow in the mountains. Armstrong now has destroyed the field. He has spread them across the mountain by the best part of an hour today. A number of riders have given up, and the arms go up in salute. Lance Armstrong looks to the sky, no doubt in memory of his friend Casatelli, who died in the Tour de France and of course was an Italian. Armstrong across the line, going further down the road now, Paul. This man is losing more time and still proving best of the rest.
He certainly is best of the rest. This would be a completely different bike race if he hadn't lost over 6 minutes on the third day of this race on the Passage aux Gois. In fact, he's recovered quite a bit over the last kilometres. He's just 31 seconds behind Armstrong, and Fernando Escartin, the early attacker, he's losing some serious time.
Now, can Gotti take him on? Because Gotti will be the best Italian to finish atop of Sestriere now, but Escartin, who played his cards well, in the end was beaten by Armstrong and finishes third. Gotti is fourth. The race continues now. Beltran rode a brilliant race for Zuller and got him into second place as well. He comes over ahead of Richard Virenque, and Contreras will come over in seventh place. Well, this has been a smashing of the greats here in the mountain stage at Sestriere, and Lance Armstrong has proved the best of them all today.
A lot of people expected the climbs to go out for you today. You actually turned the tables around and gave them a big slap in the face.
Well, I wanted to answer some questions about that because there was a lot of people that that figured my climbing was suspect, and
you answered that today.
No, I mean I gave a response, but I wasn't trying to shove it in anybody's face. I just wanted to. I felt good. I saw an opportunity. So Dufault was dropped. Dufault was my main concern, and when he was dropped, then I went.
And did he go? Lance Armstrong winning, 31 seconds ahead of Alex Zuller, 1:26 ahead of Escartin and Gotti. And Kurt van der Wouwer there of Lotto came up good at the end, 8th place for him, 3:10 back. And riders coming in all the time as the bad weather continued to close in on the field. Abraham Olano lost 3 minutes 10 seconds, while Laurent Dufault lost 3.5 minutes, and that was a lot. Christophe Moreau, he descended from second overall by losing 5 minutes and 4 seconds, and Pavel Tonkov, who crashed, 5 minutes 4 seconds lost for him as well. Lance Armstrong looking very, very good in the maillot jaune now, because his lead is beginning to grow and grow. 6 minutes and 3 seconds over Abraham Olano, 7:44 over Moreau's done well to hold on to third. Zuller is slowly climbing out of the depths of this race, 7:47 back, but in fourth place overall. Fernando Escartin did his best today, but he's still 9 minutes and 1 second off the pace. But look at this now, 10 minutes 34 to Tonkov. The new leader in the King of the Mountains is Richard Virenque, by just a couple of points ahead of Lance Armstrong, who followed him over the mountains today. And in the green jersey, Stuart O'Grady's got a firm grip on that for the moment, at least, ahead of Eric Zabel. And this man, the former leader in the green jersey, he went out today, abandoned, while poor old Mario Cipollini crashed and was forced to abandon. Tonkov, who also crashed, did finish. So to the 10th stage, 220 kilometres. We're now bound for the mecca of world cycling, Alpe d'Huez. And Paul, if Armstrong is in a mood like he was yesterday, everybody's in trouble.
Again, this is a very difficult stage, but it's a long stage, 220 kilometers. Zevgeny Spruk, one of the riders who crashed as well yesterday, didn't start this morning, so the field at the Tour de France is starting to be reduced in serious numbers. But over the first climbs, the riders didn't really want to race, Phil, but already several riders were put into serious difficulty, and one man who it's reported is not in very good shape is Axel Merckx.
Well, that really is sad, because Father Eddie is following in the team cars today, watching son Axel. But it's Bastille Day, by the way, and we've not had a French stage winner yet. The last Frenchman to win on Bastille Day was Laurent Jalabert, and he isn't even here.
He's over the road from here in Switzerland, where he calls home these days, and he won't start racing again till after the Tour de France. But the first sprint point of the day, it was obviously going to be Eric Zabel, who was out there trying to get himself back up there in the King of the Sprints competition. He's in the pink and white, but right on his shoulders there in the green is Stuart O'Grady.
And this has become a great battle between these two riders. Zabel getting it, though, ahead of O'Grady and Christophe Capel. And so Zabel is nibbling closer once more to O'Grady. Remember, he's aiming for Sean Kelly's record of 4 wins straight. Onto the Col du Mont-Cenis, 67 kilometres covered, and Axel Merckx decided to abandon the race, and going with him, the Lamprey rider Jan Zverada. He was the man caught up in that melee with Tom Steels a few days ago. Onto the top of the climb, Konishev, again, surprise points for Dimitri, followed by Vironk and Mondini, Gianpaolo Mondini there, coming over in 3rd place.
But the big climb of the day is going to be the Col de la Croix de Fer. That really is a mother of a climb, because at 155 kilometers covered, that's where the race really did start to split to pieces. But again, I tell you, Phil, the US Postal Service did a great job, but 2 riders out in the lead, Stefan Oehrlot and Thierry Bourguignon, had a great advantage over the rest of the pack.
In fact, almost 5 minutes over Roland Meyer there, and Richard Vironk leading up to the best of the rest, 6 minutes and 11 seconds behind Stefan Oehrlot. Remember that Oehrlot is trying to get a French stage win here. They haven't had one yet, as they're heading out now towards Bourg d'Oisans and up the climb of Alpe d'Huez. And that's where we are now, and these 2 riders, Paul, are still clear.
Still clear, but it's not by very much. Their advantage was really starting to crumble. At the bottom of the climb, it was 4 minutes and 50 seconds. But you can see here, Stefan Oehrlot is fighting to survive. He's struggling and hoping that he can hold on to at least some of that advantage up to the top. Because for a Frenchman to win on Bastille Day at the Alpe d'Huez would be a great victory.
Well, they got away at 77 kilometres covered today, Oehrlot and Bourguignon. There's the devil. And it looks to me as though he may have put the curse on Bourguignon, because he doesn't look at all well, and he's looked as though he's been suffering since this climb began. Oehrlot is now having to go for it or lose the stage, and he's been simply brilliant so far today.
Stefan Oehrlot has been in 1 or 2 good breakaways since the very start of this Tour de France, so hopefully Mother Chance will smile on him this afternoon. A former wearer of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France and a former national champion, but that is where he has to drag his body. Alpe d'Huez, 22 corners to get yourself up to the summit. At the bottom of the climb field, the main field is already starting.
And just look at this. Again, Armstrong is here in a great position, and again he's left with just 1 rider to look after him, Tyler Hamilton. This is Roland Meyer coming back. He tried to catch up with the other 2. He's failed. And just look at the way Hamilton has attacked the slopes of Alpe d'Huez there, Paul.
Unbelievable, great job by Hamilton. But further up the road, the French are all shouting for this man, Stefan Oehrlot, who is trying to hang on. He's going to lose serious time, but if he can get himself into a good rhythm, he just might do enough to hold on and get the stage victory at the summit of this climb. The former French champion, not too happy there with the encouragements. These spectators sometimes get a little overzealous, and I've seen riders get knocked off by them.
What spectators seem to forget is that these riders are going through all sorts of pain here. They're trying to compose themselves, concentrate on the climb, and the last thing they want are people touching them, of course. Oehrlot continues the climb up here, and there's nobody with him now. Bourguignon has dropped right back down the climb. Oehrlot, he knows this climb as well as anybody. Back to the chase group here, and again Tyler is riding simply brilliantly in the command of Armstrong.
For the time advantage of Stefan Oehrlot is still 3 minutes and 30 seconds, so he hasn't lost an awful lot despite the big effort on the front of the main field by Tyler Hamilton. Armstrong is riding like a true champion, Phil. He's moving up into 2nd place behind his teammate to show the other riders in this group that he is still strong and he's not worried about any attacks. But this group here is really starting to suffer. This is a group that was caught in between. This is the former champion of France, Francois Simon.
And they are in a little bit of difficulty, I think, because Simon has been yo-yoing at the back for a little while now, although you've got to hand it to him. He's a very courageous rider, and so too is Tyler Hamilton today. He's going to survive as long as he possibly can, but once more he's playing a perfect role here to keep Armstrong as fresh as possible. And the speed of these riders on the climb.
Unbelievable. You can see on Tyler Hamilton's right knee there's in fact a little bandage. That was because he also was involved in a crash yesterday, as was Kevin Livingston on the descent down towards Sestriere.
Well, this is Manuel Beltran, who's gone off that Armstrong group and is trying to get away now. So this will cause a reaction because the group is only just there. Paul, can you remember the last time we saw such a big bunch of riders so near the front?
A long time since I've seen such a big group of riders on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez. But what's happening now is Banesto are trying to take a page out of the book of Kelme from yesterday, the tactical book. They're launching Beltran up the road, and the idea is hopefully if Alex Zula's got anything in his legs, he can jump across the gap, and that will leave then 2 riders from the Banesto squad in front of Armstrong. And again, they seriously want to try and test him on these climbs. They realized he was impressive yesterday, but they reckon if they can hit him 2 days on the run, they might have a chance to crack him.
Well, it's so often been proved in the past. You have one good day, then you have one bad day in the 2 days of racing in the Alps. And Armstrong had a simply stupendous day yesterday. Now, is he riding with a little bit more, should we say, common sense here, because he's just watching the moves from this group, and 2 more riders have now got themselves off the front as well. Remember, it's Stefan Erlo up front, then we've got Beltran, and now we've got a couple of guys chasing.
This is Benoit Salmon, the Casino rider on the front. And again, look at this, Phil. Contreras has come across. He's the rider from Kelme, and they're trying to do it again. They're trying to set something up for Fernando Escartin. A good move by Kelme, and they're going to have now a Kelme rider and a Banesto rider up the road, and that is an excellent tactical maneuver. They're still trying to surprise Armstrong, but you see, he doesn't attack or chase any of these lesser riders. He's waiting for the big names like Zula and Escartin to attack themselves.
And Contreras is actually a very good rider, winning his own national tour in Colombia this year, and he looked the wrong way there because Salmon has just stepped up the pace a little bit. And this young man, by the way, is looking like the best rookie of the tour right now as he heads up the best young riders classification. He's certainly climbing well.
Further up the slope, Stefan Erlo is still leading the race, but in fact he's 2 minutes now ahead of Thierry Bourguignon, and the group with the yellow jersey and Lance Armstrong is at 3 minutes and 5 seconds.
So this is Beltran, and if they join him, that'll be 3 useful riders on the ascent of Alpe d'Huez. Just up around the corner, I think we're going to find... Well, let's go back here, because this is Escartin who's gone now. So Contreras softened up the rest of them, and now Escartin is gone. He's had to go reasonably early on the climb, because if he's going to win time, he's got to allow himself the space to do it.
Well, Tyler Hamilton was suffering there. He looked over his shoulder at Lance Armstrong as if to say, come on, Lance, you go for it. I've got nothing left at all. It's up to you to assume control again. But this, again, is the same tactics from Kelme as it was yesterday. Contreras has gone, now joined by Escartin, and they're going to try and really put the hammer down and open up the time gaps on Armstrong again. Escartin now needs to get himself big time to pull himself closer to Armstrong in the overall rankings.
And Contreras knew that move was coming. He kept looking over his shoulder to see where Escartin was. Now he knows he's up alongside him. There's a reaction from Tonkov now. Had such a bad day yesterday with that fall and was so desperately disappointed, but he's now trying to soften up the group as well.
And still, there's no reaction from the yellow jersey. He's letting these guys move clear. He's riding very intelligently, but I do think he's going to have to react pretty soon to that attack by Escartin, because he's always said over the first week of the tour, the 2 biggest men that I fear are Fernando Escartin and Alex Zula. He's not too worried now about number 31, Pavel Tonkov. Tonkov lost a lot of time yesterday, more than 5 minutes by the end of the day. He is trying to get himself the stage victory.
Well, you know, you think of the nationalities in the lead, and the nationalities have won at the top of Alpe d'Huez. They've only ever had 1 Spanish winner there, 1 American, that was Andy Hampsten, 1 Frenchman, and 1 Colombian winner. The Dutch and the Italians hold the monopoly with 6 wins for Italy and 8 for the Netherlands. And now Armstrong has accelerated and is almost as easy as you like. He started to pick up those riders, starting with Tonkov. We're back up the front now, and this rider suffering all shades of agony here now, Stefan Erlo. And they are coming slowly but surely towards him. Tonkov has gone again.
This is an amazing style of Tonkov. He never looks to be suffering on the climbs. He uses a massive gear compared to most of the other climbers, but he will, on a good day, keep going and going till he snaps the elastic. There is a reaction coming from behind. It looks this time as if it's Alex Zulla's gone after him, so Armstrong has to react. There is Armstrong, a little bit off the pace. He hasn't quite got onto Zulla's wheel.
Well, this is unbelievable now, because all of the riders are trying one-on-one to crack Lance Armstrong, who's sitting there pedaling that low gear as if he's on a Sunday outing, and he's just watching these riders destroy themselves right in front of him.
Zulla saw his chance there. He came up to the wheel of Tonkov and responded with an attack. Richard Virenque is on the wheel of Lance Armstrong, suffering to try and stay there, suffering to stay with the group. Armstrong has responded very well to the attack by Alex Zulla there, and just a little further up the road now you can see the group of Fernando Escartin, so he's pulling himself back up slowly to the leaders once again.
Well, it's not often you see Richard Virenque suffer like this on a climb, but suffer he most certainly is. But you know, he keeps looking down and seeing that polka dot jersey on his shoulders, which says, hey, I'm the best climber, and I'm being forced to follow here now by a lot of riders, and I think that's probably keeping him in touch right now, because he's in trouble.
He really is in trouble. He's digging deep, probably deeper than he's ever dug before, to stay in contact with this group. Up the road, though, just 7 kilometers left to go to the finish for Stefan Erlo, and he's still holding on to 1.5 minutes of his advantage. If he can get just a bit closer to the finish, he may well pull it off for the French. Caught in the middle, though, the man who is becoming a real favourite with the crowd, Thierry Bourguignon, you can see they are right behind this Frenchman. He's the oldest rider in the race at 37 years of age, and he's nearly always finished his tours, and he's finished up as high as 20th in the overall standings.
He's a class bike rider, but he's about to be picked up by a lot of class bike riders here who have attacked one another all the way up these slopes, and they've regrouped, believe it or not, as Bourguignon is now being caught by them. This is absolutely incredible here as first Beltran goes through, followed by Alex Zulla. Look at the tempo of these two riders on the Spanish Banesto team, and Beltran still looks good.
Once you've got the pressure on, you have to keep it up there, especially on a slope like the Alpe d'Huez. Escartin moving up very nicely into 3rd place, and Armstrong is in 4th in the yellow jersey. They're keeping a very close eye on operations. He's responded to the attacks. They came on the back of this group. There's a recovery there from Giuseppe Guerini, the Italian rider on the Telecom squad. He was dropped earlier on, but he's managed to pull himself back into the race, and still Stefan Erlo is hanging on.
Oh dear me, clinging is the word now, and it's not nice to see a German flag waved at you either. But look at this, 4 kilometers from the summit. He will see the chalets now right up the top of Alpe d'Huez, and 4 kilometers on the road would take him about 6.5 minutes. But here, it's going to take him a lot longer than that. They're right behind him.
They're right behind him. 15 seconds is the official time cap coming from race radio. Armstrong still looks calm and collected. He'll be happy with today's performance. The closer he gets to the finish, the more confident he's going to feel, and he may well have a go at trying to get the stage victory today after that magnificent win yesterday at Sestriere. But there is the man who set the race alight, Stefan Erlo, Phil, and it's all over for him on Bastille Day.
130 kilometers in the lead for Stefan Erlo. He's resigned to the capture. That's a great shame in many ways. Shakes his head as he sees them go through. He can't possibly hold on to them, but he's going to have a little go, I think, as Armstrong goes by him, followed by Tonkov, and then comes Contreras. He can't possibly hang on to the tail now. The winner will come from this group.
Beltran on the front, 163 from Banesto. He's keeping the pressure on. He's probably hoping that the win can go to their man, Alex Zulla. That is where they still have to climb. It's a horrendous climb. The attack now comes from Guerini. He's been sitting at the back, and he might well cause the surprise. The reaction, though, comes from Tonkov. He wants the win as well today.
Well, Tonkov's still smarting after his bad day yesterday. He's done nothing but attack on this climb, but all of a sudden he eases up. He hasn't got the answer. Alex Zulla looked at him and didn't like the way he sat up there, because he allowed the gap to open, and he's caught Zulla too. Zulla is winded as Guerini just looks over his shoulder, and looking at his face, he looks pretty cool at the moment.
Well, that attack has blown away Beltran. He did a lot of work for Alex Zulla. Zulla looks to me as if he's got the measure of Guerini. It's down to about 30 meters, but Guerini's still out of the saddle, still bouncing away. This young man was brought across to the Telecom team to help Jan Ullrich this year in the mountains, but there is no Jan Ullrich, so he gets a free card to ride the way he wants to on the mountain passes. But it looks as if, in fact, Zulla has cracked, because now he's seriously opened up a gap. It's around about 15 seconds they've sat up.
Well, Guerini starts to go clear now, but what a select group they've got behind, and they don't know how to break each other up at all as they continue to come up now. Guerini is not going to upset Lance Armstrong's overall lead in the Tour just yet, and so there's no reason for Lance to counter the move.
It's the other riders in the group who have to attack if they want to get the stage victory. Everybody wants to have a stage victory at the Alpe d'Huez on their palmarès. There, Tonkov has decided he's not going to lay down arms. He's gone clear. And Richard Virenque, I don't know where he's getting this strength from, Phil, but he has recovered, chased immediately by Escartine, and they looked as if, in fact, they put Armstrong into difficulty there with these constant accelerations. Armstrong doesn't seem to have the repetitive accelerations that the climbers have, but he lets them go and he pulls himself back slowly into the group.
Winds them back in, and still Richard Virenque is tagged onto the back. There is Lance Armstrong, the perspiration running off him. Giuseppe Guerini is the man up front, chased by Pavel Tonkov. Escartini is still there on the left. In the middle is Alex Zülle, also there. And it looks as though Tonkov now back in the fold at the head of this little group. Well, here is Guerini. Now, the last race he won was back in 1998. He won the 17th stage of the Giro d'Italia. Now he's looking to try and win the 10th stage of the Tour de France, and that would be a first. Another acceleration by Tonkov.
Tonkov really wants it. He knows that he cannot slow down now. 20 seconds is the advantage of Guerini, and Tonkov has decided, I've got to go now. I've got to try and get the win at the top of the Alpe d'Huez for Russia. The response coming from behind, but now it looks as if Tonkov has broken the elastic, and he has managed to get away from the other leaders of the Tour de France, and they will now, Phil, start to watch each other. Escartini is going to watch Zülle. Zülle is going to watch Armstrong, but for this man, Guerini, this is what he's been waiting for. The red kite, the Flamme Rouge, just 1 kilometre left to go to the finish. His advantage 20 seconds over the rest.
And now it's just 900 metres from the finish, and what will be the greatest win of his career here. And what on earth has happened? Good, I don't know what to say, because Paul, that guy just stood in the middle of the road, and Guerini has hit him. Now he had 20 seconds, and the time gap is coming down rapidly.
They'll come back pretty quickly, Phil.
They've
managed to get a bit of a recovery there. This is how it happened. That photographer there stood in the middle of the road. He didn't realise the distance. Guerini went straight into him. He must have really panicked when that happened. In fact, the guy who knocked him off didn't even try to help him back onto his bike. But right behind him now, he must be able to smell Tonkov. He can feel the breath of the Russian on his shoulders there, and he knows now he's got to give everything. I don't know where he's going to get his strength from now, because Tonkov is closing fast.
But look at the adrenaline flowing now on this man as he starts to make his way across the town of Alpe d'Huez, heading towards the finish. They're not going to catch him, and neither should they, because that was grossly unfair if he'd have lost the Tour because of that crash, and it would have caused an awful lot of embarrassment to that young man. But now it's all okay, because Giuseppe Guerini is doing up the zip on his racing jersey, just making sure that Tonkov is not catching him as he heads towards the line now. The adrenaline absolutely coursing through those veins as he races across the wide roads on the top of the mountain here. This is the last left-hander now, where Greg LeMond once came around with Bernard Hinault, and they tried to get a dead heat, and the judges gave it to Bernard Hinault. An American again in yellow, but this man well deserves the stage win now. He wasn't foiled by the accident to the photographer. He keeps looking back. He knows they're coming close, but it's all okay for Giuseppe Guerini. 29 years of age, and his biggest win since he got the 17th stage of the Giro d'Italia, which is over 1 year ago. And look at that time, what a long day this has been. But Guerini gets the win.
Incredible performance. I don't know where he got that strength from, Phil, over the last few moments. Tonkov was closing down on him, but Tonkov himself slowed down towards the end. Tonkov is going to hold on for second place, but there's a big attack coming there from Fernando Escartine, trying to get just a few more seconds on Armstrong, but it's Zülle taking up the chase, and Armstrong's going to be pretty happy there to sit across the line in 5th place.
So Tonkov comes in, and Armstrong will be given the same time as that group, so all of the men who matter are right there alongside him. There's the result. Guerini by 21 seconds, 4 seconds better than Escartine. This man is all smiles, but he could have been so very, very different.
Sì, ho visto che si è messo in mezzo alla strada per farmi fare una foto, poi io ero indeciso se passare a destra o a sinistra, e per tagliare la strada e farla più corta sono andato a sinistra, e lui si è spostato proprio a sinistra e mi è venuto addosso.
How embarrassing was that? Well, Lance Armstrong came into the Alps with a lead of 2:20 over Christophe Moreau. He's going to leave them with a lead of 7 minutes 42 over Abraham Olano. And can you imagine how happy Lance Armstrong is now? Well, as he salutes the crowd here, we can now join him as he talks once more with Paul Sherwin.
Do you not like to have won at Alpe d'Huez, because the last American to win here was Andy Hampson, your former teammate?
It's definitely a stage that is special, and it's actually more special than most because it holds so much mystique. But you can't win every day.
Any thoughts of responding to the attack of Guarini, or were you just happy to keep an eye on Escartin and Zula?
Yeah, no, I needed to. Today I didn't need to attack, and I didn't need to try and win. I needed to keep my rivals in check, and Olano was dropped, and some other favorites were dropped, so it was a good situation. The only thing I needed to do is be steady.
Oh, it makes it sound easy, doesn't he? Well, Richard Virenque has had a good couple of days as well. 29 points clear in the King of the Mountains, while Stuart O'Grady is still clear of Eric Zabel in that race for the green jersey. The mountains are more or less behind us now as we run towards Saint-Etienne, but as Paul Sherwin knows, it's pretty hilly around the back of the city.
It certainly is. This is the next 4 days of the Tour de France, Phil, are going to be very difficult. Although they are leaving the Alps behind, these roads around here leading down to the Pyrenees are very difficult, and the temperature, although it says 25 degrees Celsius, can climb up very easily to 35 degrees C and make it a very difficult, long, hard day in the saddle.
And it wouldn't be a Tour de France, wouldn't it, without the sunflowers there. But this man not interested in looking at the flowers because he was in a group which broke away, and he's gone clear of that group now, and we're just under 30 kilometres from the finish. Ludo Dirksen, the champion of Belgium, he's only won one race this year, and that was it.
If you're going to win one race, it might as well be the national champion, because you get yourself a pretty smart jersey that you can put on your shoulders for the next 12 months. But this man rode a brilliant race at the Belgian Championships just 1 week before the start of the Tour de France, and I was surprised to see him attack this group of riders that he was with. There were in fact 7 riders got clear of the peloton, built themselves up a lead in excess of 16 minutes, and they're now on the final climb of the day, the Col de la Croix de Chabouret, and there's no reaction at all, Phil, in the main field.
Well, it's like a club run at the back, because they're more than 16 minutes behind now as they've gone under that 25 kilometres to go banner, because all the riders who broke away here didn't affect the overall by a long way, and this rider has decided to go for what would be the greatest moment of a career which has not been going very long. He turned professional at 29 because he was a truck driver. He used to paint them, in fact, and now he's found himself as a good bike rider. Arriving in Saint-Etienne then, Ludo Dirksen has a good lead over the rest of the breakaway. They've tried to chase him down the mountains, but to no avail at all. He's going to enjoy this next couple of minutes now.
This is a great moment for a man to be able to win a stage of the Tour de France, but even to win a stage of the Tour de France with a national champion's jersey on your shoulders, it is magnificent. He doesn't have too much to worry about because the rest of the group, Phil, are more than a minute behind.
And the main field has now been timed at more than 20 minutes behind. So Ludo Dirksen is going to climb up the overall classification tonight, but it won't worry him too much because he started the day 74 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. He won't be thinking about that now. Now, the race here for second place, and Alexander Vinokourov leading them out. I must say, a rider we expected to be in for the overall, but hasn't been. Vladimir Belly then going for it now. Vladimir Belly, and also in third line is Konishev, who's having his best tour for years here, Dmitry Konishev. Now, he used to be a good sprinter. He's won the last stage in Paris before now, and it looks like he's going to have a clear shot at second place. So Konishev coming forward, just getting Vinokourov on the line, and behind comes Vladimir Belly. And the rest of the breakaway drifting in. There's the time gap to the right of the screen. Rick Verbrugge there. Another Belgian, but this is the Belgian who'll grab the headlines tomorrow. The champion of Belgium, Ludo Dirksen's getting his first stage win in the Tour. Here's the main field. Look at the clock on the left, but Eric Zabel still needs points for that green jersey of Stuart O'Grady, and he wins the bunch sprint as well. That was for 8th place today. And again, he has beaten Stuart O'Grady in a sprint. This is the man who gets the flowers today in Saint-Etienne, though. The end of the 11th stage, Ludo Dirksen's ahead of Dmitry Konishev, Vinokourov, Belly and Verbrugge. Overall, though, no change at all. Olano, Zula, Dufaux, Escartin are still the riders closest to Lance Armstrong. And the next, as we look down here on the city of Saint-Etienne, the riders now will continue what will be hot and sultry days as we head towards the south and our next destination, the Pyrenees. And so to stage 12, 201 kilometres from Saint-Galmier down to Saint-Flour. And the undulations continue under a very hot sun today, Paul.
Well, these days are really going to wear out the US Postal Service team, Phil, because for the last few days, all they have been doing is sitting on the front of the main pack. Despite the fact that the breakaways have been going clear, they've had to assume control of the race, and that is going to wear them down. The breakaway got away again today, and it was David Echavarria who led them into the town.
And among the riders abandoning, Ivan Gotti has gone today, and this rider dreaming now of his first stage win in his Tour de France, because he's now heading up to what is a nasty little climb up towards the finishing line. He was part of a group of 14 riders, and he's now decided to give it a go for the finish.
It's really going to be a question of survival. His advantage over these chasing group of three is in only 20 seconds at the moment. Francois Simon is leading them, the French national champion. He's looking for a victory for France. Alberto Eli is the Telecom rider in the pink and white jersey, and Steve de Wolf is the Belgian rider just on the back. In fact, Chabaria has stretched it out to 24 seconds, and the rest of the group more than a minute behind.
And we've called it the Stefan Erlo group. That man has been in so many escapes, and he's yet to get a result out of a day's racing in the Tour de France. He came close at Alpe d'Huez. 2 kilometres to go now for the three pursuers of de Wolf, Eli and Simon, but they're getting no closer to little David Echebarria. He is a rider that started out as a sprinter, having been the ex-amateur champion of Spain, but he's developed into a very good stage race rider because he's won the Tour de l'Avenir, what used to be known as the Amateur Tour de France, and now it looks as though the pressure's going on here now, as again Francois Simon is trying to go clear as he races under the kilometre to go.
Well, Simon got a lone victory at the National Championships himself just 1 week before the Tour de France, and this was the kind of finish that it was, but he's not going to do anything to catch David Echebarria because today the victory is going to go to Spain.
So the Once boys are losing ground with their team leader Abraham Olano, but this young man is very much going forward now. His first stage victory in a Tour de France, and he's making the most of this. Little David Echebarria. And a good breakaway, late as it was by the champion of France, but still the French are being denied a stage win in this year's Tour. As they come up to the line, it's Simon gets second this time around. And they're still looking for a stage win. It's never happened, by the way, when they haven't won at least one stage since 1926. Here comes Alberto Eli. He will go across the line in third place. And none of these riders, by the way, approaching Lance Armstrong in that leader's yellow jersey. So Lance Armstrong quite happy with the way the race is going at the moment, as the riders will continue through the heat of this area. The main field, again, are losing big chunks of time today, and again, Zabel is proving best of the rest. So Zabel now is beginning to prove he is the best man for that green jersey. There's the result of the day, and Frédéric Bessy of France getting 7th place. All these riders in the original breakaway. Hello and welcome to the Tour de France. Well, yesterday should have been a fairly routine stage through the Massif Central, but for some of the riders it brought all of the emotions of this great event: happiness, sadness and mixed feelings. It was happiness for little Spaniard David Echebarria, who won the stage, his first in a Tour. The Stefan Erlo of France, part of yesterday's long escape, he climbed to 6th overall. But it was sadness for the Swede Magnus Backstedt, who, with an injured knee, retired in tears. Australian Stuart O'Grady has hated these travel days between the Alps and the Pyrenees, and yesterday he trailed home and lost his green jersey to Eric Zabel. Another Aussie, Jay Sweet, carries the weight of the Lanterne Rouge, and the last man of the Tour, although playing to the crowd, is very tired. And even the favourites made mistakes. Abraham Olano lost 2 seconds in the uphill finish as Lance Armstrong and Alex Zuller sprinted ahead. Overall, Lance Armstrong still has his lead intact, while Alex Zuller is now only 3 seconds behind Abraham Olano. Up into the top 8 is Stefan Erlo. And to add to a controversial day, Lance Armstrong, who conserved his big lead, has found other adversaries among the media. Some newspapers, especially here in France, are alluding to the fact he must be taking illegal stimulants. Because of these spurious remarks, Lance Armstrong walked to the obligatory anti-doping control yesterday without speaking to anyone, and it will stay that way until a press conference on Monday afternoon. That was confirmed by the team's general manager, Mark Gorski, when he spoke to Paul Schoen this morning on the telephone from the team's hotel just before they left for the start.
He and I have decided that he's just going to take 2 or 3 days where he's going to take some time off from doing the interviews just to provide him a little more time to recuperate. Well, I think Lance is, without question, the best athlete in the professional peloton. He doesn't need any performance-enhancing substances to to be the best, and I think the fact that it's a fairly level playing field this year is why he's winning the race. I think he's angered by the allegations, and there's certainly no truth to them at all. He's taken a couple days off, as we just said, from any more media interviews. He's done an awful lot in the last week, and he will be doing a press conference on Monday afternoon.
He is definitely not taking performance-enhancing drugs. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, it's part of a very strong team policy that we have on the U.S. Postal Service team. It's in every rider's contract. There's no gray areas like there may be on some other teams, and we're very clear on it. And I have no doubts that Lance is absolutely clean and looks forward to a strong last few days of the Tour de France.
Well, there's no doubt that some sections of the press, mainly French, simply cannot accept that Lance Armstrong is winning this Tour de France by such a great margin. But the thing is, but for the crash of Alex Zülle, the gaps would be a lot closer, I'm sure of that. Anyway, this is now the longest stage of the race at 236.5 kilometres or 148 miles as they go away from Saint-Flour to Albi, and we can expect again a very hot day.
This is one of the stages that Armstrong was pretty worried about, Phil, because there are 7 climbs on the day and hardly any flat at all. And the breakaway got to get away again early on. And at first sprint point at Laguiole, they had 8 minutes and 30 seconds over the group. But for Lance, it was a bad day because he lost another teammate. Peter Meinhard Nielsen was forced to abandon with an injured knee.
And that's sad because the 2 previous years the US Postal Service have ridden the Tour, they've never lost a man. Now this year they've lost 2 men with injury, both with injury really, thinning them down to 7 riders. Abraham Olano here, back in the main field and still working out where on earth he can go in this year's Tour now. Onto the Côte de la Moisette, and the breakaway still well clear here, 96 kilometres covered and 13 minutes 15 seconds the advantage as Mariano Piccoli leads them over the top of the climb.
A good move by Mariano Piccoli to get himself into this group because he can pick up points along the whole of the stage, and that will drag him a lot closer to the lead of Richard Virenque. The main field not worried at all about any of the riders in that group, 18 minutes 31 seconds behind.
Well, the Kelme team has started to ride now because they're endangering their team position overall. The Spanish riders in the breakaway, but it won't affect these 2 riders here now at 1 kilometre to go because we've got Salvatore Camesso and Serpellini is the rider who's gone. Little Camesso in his first Tour de France. He won just before the start the Italian Championship. He hasn't won many races. The only other victory he's got is a stage of the Tour of the Cape in South Africa, and that is more or less an open race. Now he's coming up towards the back wheel of Serpellini. If he can get into the slipstream, Paul, he might just about win it.
Well, he's just done it. He scrambled to get back onto the wheel of Marco Serpellini, a former junior world champion. He's a very good rider indeed, but he doesn't have the great sprint. But Serpellini has attacked 2 or 3 times to try and put Camesso into difficulty, but now Camesso has him just where he wants him, and he's going to force his compatriot here to lead out the sprint.
Well, there were originally a breakaway of 15 riders here. These 2 made a go for it. It's worked now because I don't think the rest are going to come back here. Serpellini, he put himself on the front, and there's no way the other Italian is going to come round until he sees that finish line barrier. He's going to force Serpellini to lead out, and this is it now. He's going to have to give it his best shot right down the barriers. Look at the face, though, of the little man, Salvatore Camesso, former European road racing champion. He now goes clear, and Serpellini knows it's all over. So it's always nice to win when you're the champion of Italy, and he's done it this time. Bugno has done it in the Tour de France, and so too has Mario Cipollini.
A great win. Once he got in front of Marco Serpellini, there was never going to be any challenge at all. This man has been great over the first week of the Tour de France for Mario Cipollini, but now with Cipollini's withdrawal, he gets the chance to ride for himself, and he's done it to pretty good success this afternoon.
Well, this is the race for 3rd place here now, the remnants of that big breakaway, and Piccoli, who's not only a good climber but a very good sprinter as well, which is unusual. He gets the 3rd place ahead of Paolo Lanfranchi, and Roland Meyer was the rider across the line there in 5th. But the winner today, the champion of Italy, Salvatore Camesso, and in his first Tour de France as well. And again, Eric Zabel now back in the green jersey, cleaning up in the bunch sprint and nudging further ahead of arch-rival Stuart O'Grady there. Abraham Olano still second overall in this race. No change at all in the overall classification, but it was a hard day of racing nonetheless. And it's also another day knocked off now as we go one day to the rest day of 199 kilometres from Castres down to Saint-Gaudens, where the riders have a day off right in the shadow of the Pyrenees. And then the big boys must come out and fight once again. The beauty of this little town of Castres, as this is the Tour village where the riders come along and talk to the people before the race gets underway. And then once out on the open highway today, well, they kept it together for a while, but soon a breakaway of 6 was trying to get clear of the field. And the towns in this area had really turned out the style for the passage of the riders in the Tour de France. The beauty of the Tour, under the escort of the US Postal Service's riders, who really have rallied around their team leader and the race leader, of course, Lance Armstrong. In the heat of the day, as the race goes down towards the far south of a beautiful country, nobody was in any hurry at all. The peloton dragging their heels a little bit, 14 minutes and 7 seconds back.
This leading group of riders, Phil, once again taking advantage of the fact that the US Postal Service are not chasing down the breakaways. They're leaving it up to the Spanish teams, who are now fighting to try and gain control of the king of the teams competition. The Spanish teams are really at the top of that competition at the moment.
An interesting diversion for Lance Armstrong today, but if you want to know what it's like to be a prize winner in the Tour de France, well, ask Paul Sherwin.
This is the finish line of the Tour de France. You've just come across it in first place. What happens next? You've got to run the gauntlet through a melee of journalists, photographers, cameramen. But the green shirts, the security men of the Tour de France, they bring you in here. After 5 hours in the saddle, you've got to negotiate this really bad surface. But once you get into there, it's a quick wash down and a nice clean jersey. Immediately after that, you're brought into here. This is the holding area. This is reserved for champions, the green jersey, the yellow jersey, and the King of the Mountains, not to forget the winner of the stage. Once you hear the Tour de France anthem, you can walk out here nice and relaxed onto the top step of the podium. You can receive the accolades of the crowd. I don't know what that's like because I've never been there. I wonder who it's going to be today.
Well, never mind, Paul, you did come pretty close, I'll give you that. 20 kilometres to go now for the breakaway that's deciding this 14th stage, taking us down now towards the finish at Saint-Gaudens, a breakaway which started, in fact, at 71 kilometres today.
Unbelievable again, Phil. The speed has been so high. The first hour of racing, 46 kilometres an hour and 44 kilometres an hour in the second hour. That's why these guys have managed now to build up such a huge lead. And all the time on the front of the main field over the first 2 hours, it was the US Postal Service. But once this group started to get a big advantage, again, it was the Spanish teams who came to the front to start to organise the chase. Under the last kilometre, though, it's 2 riders managed to get clear. Dmitry Konichev, now he's won stages in the Tour de France before. He's won the last stage in Paris, but he hasn't won a stage for a couple of years.
And in fact, 8 years since he's won the stage. Vladimir Belli, by the way, was the best placed to this breakaway, 31st overall, 26 minutes off the pace. But these two are going to fight out the finish now. Now, normally Konichev is a very fast finisher, but he's got Farazin here from the Mapei team. And in fact, Konichev is not willing to take the lead out, even though he knows that Lelli is coming up quickly. And in fact, the Italian has panicked. Farazin has gone first. He's gone far too early here, and that's why he's sat up. But you see Konichev, who knows this man very well because Konichev lives in Italy. He's had a lot of firsts for Russia as a professional. He was the first world medalist in Chambéry when he got silver. He was the first man to pull on the polka dot jersey as leader of the King of the Mountains in the Tour de France for Russia. Now he'd like to continue his winning ways with another stage victory here. Remember, it's 8 years since he won, and that was in Paris in 1991. And now he goes again. And this time I think it's for real now, because Dmitry Konichev of Russia is going to make it fairly easy. Farazin did his best. It all didn't work out for him. He gets second, and Lelli gets a frustrated third. Now the race from the rest here. As they come up to the wine, that is Weisserman, who comes in, followed by Jackie Giron and the rest of that breakaway group. But here's the man who gets the glory, Dmitry Konishev of Russia, who now lives in Italy, and a victory for Mercatoni Uno, which is the team, of course, of Marco Pantani. And so he gets to salute the crowd again, despite the age catching up with him. The sprint here now, some 13 minutes has gone by, and again a battle between O'Grady and Zabel, going the way of Eric Zabel. But Dmitry Konishev can now add Saint-Gaudens to his stage victories in the past at Pau, Aix-les-Bains and at Paris. But this man, Lance Armstrong, is still having to deny the fact he is not taking drugs in this Tour de France, and the press are saying he is.
And I can emphatically say I'm not on drugs. I thought a rider with my history and my health situation, and also with the results of my career, I would have thought that it shouldn't be such a surprise. Okay, I was surprised to have certain good days, but I'm not a new rider, and I'm sure that there's been some looking and prying and digging. I know there has been, but it's been a week and nothing's been found. You're not going to find anything. If it's L'Equipe, if it's Channel 4, if it's a Spanish paper, Dutch paper, Belgian paper, there's nothing to find. And I think once everybody gets done doing their due diligence, and once everybody realizes that they need to be professionals and they can't print a bunch of crap, then they'll realize that they're dealing with a clean guy. I mean, it's unfortunate that the yellow jersey of the Tour de France always has to defend drugs, or say something about drugs, but c'est la vie.
Well, I suppose it's performances like this one at Sestriere which has brought the doubters out in force.
You know, the only thing I can, like I said a minute ago, is I can assert my innocence. Certainly I've never tested positive. I've never been caught with anything. France is a country that has been very strict against doping, both from a federation standpoint, from a race standpoint, from a police standpoint. I would remind the people that I live in France. I raced all year in France. I did my Tour de France preparation in France. I did training camps in France. I'm always in France. If I had something to hide, I think I would stay away from France.
A lot of people who watch our programs have heard of your illness and see you winning now and think it's nothing short of a miracle. Do you see it that way?
It is a miracle, because 15 or 20 years ago I wouldn't be alive, much less be riding a bike or starting the Tour de France or leading the Tour de France. So yes, I think it's a miracle.
Given that there was all this stuff in the French papers, are you surprised in a room full, maybe half full of French journalists, that none of the people who have presumably written all the stuff about you have had the nerve to ask you about it face to face?
I would say some of the questions asked have pertained to that, and I've answered them. I've asserted, I don't need to do it again, I've said I'm innocent. I've sort of given some facts that I think support that. If they're here, they can certainly ask the questions. So like I've said the whole time, we have nothing to hide.
Welcome to Tour Plus and our extended coverage this year of the Tour de France. We're now facing up to 2 tough days in the Pyrenees, and this is the finishing line of the first day. The little town of Puy-en-Velay. It's never played host to the Tour de France before. Well, yesterday Lance Armstrong called a press conference in Saint-Gaudens, and he went a long way to convincing the press he really is riding this Tour without taking drugs. There was even a moment of humour. One of the journalists stood up and said, "But Lance, tomorrow all of the Spanish riders are going to attack." And Lance goes, "What?" He says, "Well, thanks for the tip. I'll try and counter the moves." But there was a black mark on the Tour yesterday, the sudden departure of the Belgian rider Ludo Dirksens. Let's go now to Gary Imlach, who is in Saint-Gaudens, to give us an update on that.
Last Thursday, Ludo Dirksens was a great story. The 34-year-old former factory worker from Belgium, who'd only turned pro 4 years ago, won his national championship and then followed that up by taking a stage win in his debut Tour de France. The story that's emerging now is a bit messier.
What seems to have happened is that when Dirksens won his stage in Saint-Etienne, he feared that he was going to test positive for a corticosteroid that he says he took without his team's knowledge to help him get over a knee injury he'd suffered in the Tour of Germany. So, before he could be caught, he decided to declare it. In fact, though, he tested positive for nothing but urine. By then, though, it was too late. His team, Lamprey, suspended him for taking what can be a permissible drug if it's given under prescription, and his tour was over. And if that's the whole story, then Dirksens is guilty of not much more than stupidity. Certainly on the Richter scale of Tour de France drug scandals, this one is struggling to register.
Well, thanks, Gary, and all of the checks for the use of EPO so far having proven negative, so that is good news. Now, the riders facing up to the first day in the Pyrenees, 173 kilometres, and a nasty new finish at Piau-Angeli, right at the end there, which is a ski station built back in 1975. Now, on the Col de Monte, the action started to begin as the riders started to again attack Lance Armstrong early.
Again, there are a lot of Kelme riders in the group. Let's not forget that today's finish is just over the border from Spain, which is why the Spanish are really so dominant this afternoon. Trying to get points in the King of the Mountains competition. Again, Mariano Piccoli just leading Richard Virenque, but at the back of the race, again, big abandons. Bo Hamburger, a former stage winner at the Tour de France, had to climb into the car.
Struggling all year to find form with an injured back, which had an operation, although he was saying only 24 hours earlier how good he felt. On to the Col du Portillon, 97.5 kilometres covered, and an interesting breakaway developing here, which contained Kurt van der Wouwer, and there he is as he heads up towards the summit, gets his first category climb as a scalp. Second was Javier Ochoa, and third rider was Ellie.
Still no major attacks coming from the main contenders of the overall standings. They're more than 2.5 minutes behind on that breakaway. But Lance Armstrong today, Phil, is going to have to pay serious attention to Alex Zuller and, of course, Fernando Escartin.
But the attacks had to come on this climb, leaving Luchon, the famous Col de Périssord. First man to the top was Alberto Elli, followed by Van der Wouwer, who's really developing as a great climber. The main field going over with Lance Armstrong right there, what's left of the main field. 1 minute 50 now the gap. They were beginning to close in.
Next climb of the day, Col de Val-Louron-Azé, and this is a very difficult climb. A couple of years ago, the riders went over this the other way, and in fact, it was a difficult stage too. But Armstrong now responding to the attacks, trying to get himself off the front and look after the possibility of him pulling himself up to Fernando Escartin.
So Armstrong on the move here now, and in fact this move was being welcomed by Richard Virenque, who was waiting for it, I think, as Armstrong made it. It had to come sooner or later, because Fernando Escartin, Laurent Dufaux, Andrea Perron and Ellie are all up the road. Escartin and Dufaux actually reaching the breakaways without Lance Armstrong.
That was a major mistake by Armstrong to let Escartin jump up the road like that, but he's putting everybody in difficulty. He's popped Richard Virenque off his wheel. Even the devil can't keep up with Armstrong this afternoon, but Alex Zuller certainly is trying to.
Zuller absolutely amazing. Every time Armstrong has won a stage of the race this last couple of weeks, he has finished second to him, and now he's come up to Armstrong. Armstrong, though, is going to kick again. It was almost as if he was calling Zuller to come through, and Zuller must have said, I can't make it, and in fact he doesn't look too good right now.
Zuller in serious difficulty on this climb. Armstrong keeps looking at him. He knows this course very well, because in fact he's just popped Zuller off his wheel, and that is a big surprise. Zuller looked comfortable. He rode across the gap up to Armstrong. Armstrong has again not attacked. He's just ridden him off his wheel, and this is what sort of damage that rider's done. It put the King of the Mountains, Richard Virenque, into serious problems.
Well, are we going to see here another demonstration on the first day in the mountains like we saw on the first day in the Alps? We're now in the Pyrenees. Virenque is in all sorts of trouble here, but he's trying to stay in touch as Casero also comes up here, the champion of Spain.
Daniel Nardella, the Mapei rider, just getting onto the back there. And once again, Pavel Tonkov, the leader of the Mapei squad, in difficulty much further down the climb. Zuller seems to have recovered a bit, Phil, because in fact he hasn't recovered. Armstrong is waiting for him. He keeps looking over his shoulders. He doesn't want to ride to the finish alone just now. He wants help, because he told me he looked at this course and he reckons the distance between the bottom of this climb and the final climb of the day is too far to ride on your own.
Well, Armstrong rode this race route when it was very, very cold indeed, and now the gap is 2 minutes 44. That's the biggest gap any of Armstrong's main rivals have taken over him this whole tour. Armstrong now dropping the others by 3 minutes. Well, I think he's very wise there to have waited for Alex Zuller, Paul. He seen he wasn't riding away from him, so he may as well let him come up, and they could probably recover and do some work together.
Sensible move. He's obviously riding intelligently. He's getting a lot of information sent up to him from the team car from Johan Bruneel. All of the US Postal riders using a very sophisticated two-way system to keep in contact with Johan Bruneel in the car to know just exactly how the race is unfolding. But this man today, Phil, is doing the ride of his life. Fernando Escartin has never won a stage in the Tour de France, and this stage at Piau-Ongoli finishes just over the border with Spain.
There's a lot of Spanish people there, that's for sure, but Escartin, again, as he tried to do in the Alps, had attacked very early on. This time he's got himself clear. This is his best shot, and he's got one more day to come in the Pyrenees tomorrow, but this is the favourable day when it finishes on top of the mountain. Tomorrow, it's a long way over the top of the Col de Tourmalet down to the finish. That was the very reason Marco Pantani didn't like the race route, so this has got to be the everything now for Escartin. He's just got to give it his all. Here we are then up the top towards the top of the Col de Val Laurent. Escartin is now on his own, and he's more than a minute ahead of Laurent Dufaux.
An unbelievable style, this Spanish climber. He's all over the machine. He very much reminds me of a former teammate of mine called Robert Albon, who was a great climber but looked absolutely disgusting on a bike. Escartin doesn't look very cool, but I tell you what, he's doing a great job out there.
Well, Dufaux has gone over, Perron has gone over, Ellie has gone over, but this is the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong with Zuller. The clock is on the right of the screen there. It's not going to be far short of 3 minutes, so he still has a lot of work to do. Of course, he has plenty of time in hand, but he will not want to give time away to a great climber like Escartin.
Well, Armstrong was setting the pace on that climb there. In fact, he's losing time on the Spanish climber because the last time check we had was 2.5 minutes, and there over the summit of the climb, it's 2 minutes 53 seconds. Armstrong is a pretty good descender, so he surely will pick back some time on this descent.
Well, not the same could not be said there of Escartin. He wobbled a bit down that bend, but now he's starting to descend very, look at this now, 80 kilometres an hour as they start to go down what is quite a tortuous descent here. And in fact, Armstrong is taking a lot of chances here, and Zuller is having none of it.
Zuller's trying to stay on the back wheel of Lance Armstrong. Armstrong is a very good descender, but in fact, somebody's having a bit of a problem there. This is Nardella who's staying on the road. That's Vladimiro Belli who's gone off the road. And I can tell you one thing, it's a pretty steep drop off to the left-hand side.
Well, he just about got on, just about. Anyway, the roads at least aren't wet, which is thankful, because if this had been the first day into Sestriere, it would have been a different story, I think, there. But now Escartin on one of the little uphills again now as he tries to cross to the final climb of the day. You pass through the beautiful little town of Saint-Louis-Choulon before you start the climb up to Piau-Ongoli. This rider is trying to do everything now, and there's been a bit of a general regrouping at the back because on the descent down there, Vironk is a noted descender. He has come back up, and so this is quite a big group. Kurt van Wouw is also here.
Well, it's great to see some Belgian riders at last really riding well in the mountains, with Kurt van der Wouw, Rick Verbrugge being a very good time trialist. It looks as if the Lotto team at last are becoming a competitive team at the Tour de France. Alex Zuller is setting the pace at the front in the white jersey. Armstrong in the yellow is very happy to be there. And once again, though, Phil, because of all these attacks by the Spanish teams, he doesn't have any teammates at all left with him. He's going to have to respond to all of the attacks, which are certainly going to come on this final climb of the day.
Well, they've started it at 2 minutes 27 seconds is the gap to Escartin. As we pass under the banner there with 10 kilometres to go. Laurent Dufaux was the rider we just caught a glimpse of. He has been left by Escartin, and he was the one that launched all the attacks that caused the original split. Escartin followed, but he's paid the price now. As Lance Armstrong again, everything looks to be under control. Alano is behind once more, and at the moment, Escartin, even with his time gains, he's still more than 5 minutes behind Armstrong overall.
And if Escartin wants to win the Tour de France, he's going to have to go into the final time trial with at least a 4 to a 5 minute advantage over the man from Texas. That's the kind of time gap that he needs to have going into the final time trial if he hopes to win this year's Tour de France. But you can see Armstrong, Phil, is not worried at all about going to the front of the group and setting the pace. And in fact, the pace he's setting again is putting Alex Zuller into a little bit of difficulty.
Well, they might well see Laurent Dufaux a little bit further up the road if they keep up. There's Andrea Perron. He's been in the break for most of the day, but all of a sudden his legs have gone to rubber, and he slides rather rapidly out the back of this group here. There's still Richard Vironk following the wheels at the back and looking for some more points to consolidate his lead in that King of the Mountains jersey.
Armstrong swung off the front there, a little upset, I think, that nobody else is trying to work too hard with him on the front of this group, and he's dropped back into 3rd or 4th place behind Angel Casera, the Spanish champion there in the orange jersey with the yellow band across it. Zülle, though, look at that, Phil. He's keeping a pretty close eye on Armstrong.
He is, and you know, the way they're riding now, they are actually afraid of Armstrong because he is dictating the pace. He has shown him his enormous strength, that they've had to come back to him, the yellow jersey. He's also hurt Alex Zülle again today, and still Zülle is going to set the pace here. So it's Zülle, Armstrong, Casero, Garcia is the rider in the Vitalicio colours, and also Vironk just behind there.
Well, Richard Vironk is supposed to be the best climber in the Tour de France, but at the moment he's really playing survival. He just seems to be hanging on the back of all of these groups when the road goes up to the summits. Armstrong doesn't feel the pace is hard enough for him, and he comes to the front of the group. But again, you can see he's using a very small gear on the climbs, ticking over quite rapidly, just like Miguel Indurain used to do. But the big difference between Indurain and Lance Armstrong is around about 20 pounds, because Armstrong, since his illness, has dropped down from 80 kilograms to 70 kilograms. And now this is not an attack again, Phil. He's just riding everybody off his wheel.
It is quite amazing at the moment, and once more he's put Alex Zülle in trouble. Zülle did his best to keep the pace up. He's a very courageous bike rider, but he could not take a wheel once Armstrong accelerated, and he slipped straight down the line and out the back. And Armstrong has done likewise at the front now. This man has no limit to his strength here. He's just going clear again.
Well, this not only is going to be good for Armstrong's morale, it's really going to batter the opposition. They will not know how to handle this. The big question about Lance Armstrong before the Tour de France was, will he survive in the big mountains? He went out and rode superbly in the first two time trials, and then he came out to Sestriere, but they didn't know how he was going to handle the Pyrenees. Well, I think once again he's answering the questions of the skeptics.
You're absolutely right. They certainly know now. Alex Zülle here in desperate trouble yet again at the back of the race. This man is not in trouble, but he wants to use his legs and his strength to gain as many seconds as he can over Armstrong, and the result is at the moment he is being limited. His escape has been limited by Armstrong, who is countering the move at the moment.
Well, he had gone up to 2:45 a few moments ago. The last time check we had was 2.5 minutes, and he's really looking in a pain style at the moment. The fact that he's rolling about on the top of the body makes me think that he's still suffering from that knee injury he got in the first week, when in fact banged his hands against the handlebars. Zülle, great ride though, Phil. He's recovered again.
He's got back to that little group, and he's going to find that the yellow jersey has left it. Now, what can he possibly do about that? This looks like Laurent Dufaux here, the man who was originally in the escape, and Armstrong is picking him up, and I think that means there'll be nobody in front except the Spanish fly.
Laurent Dufaux went out again today to try and move himself up high in the overall rankings. This man, one of the disgraced Festina team from last year, had an 8-month ban from the Swiss Federation, but he's fought his way back to the top of the sport. But this man also is trying to fight himself back to the top of the sport. He's the darling of the crowds here, I have to say, despite the fact that the organisers didn't want Richard Virenque here at the Tour de France. The most banners I've seen at the side of the road have all been to encourage the King of the Mountains, Richard Virenque.
There is no doubt he is the most popular French cyclist, Richard Virenque, but right now he's trying to catch up with the most popular American cyclist here, because Lance Armstrong is well known in Italy and in France, and they appreciate what he's doing and where he's come from to be in this position. And Armstrong now has come up behind Laurent Dufaux and has decided to take a quick breather here. I don't know whether he's going to attack him, but we're going to know pretty soon.
They can't say that Lance Armstrong hasn't done proud to the yellow jersey. He's ridden like a true champion. He attacked with the yellow jersey on his shoulders on the stage up to Sestriere, and today he's waited to the bottom of this climb to try and again put time between himself and Alex Zülle. But one thing I don't think he counted on, Phil, was the performance of this man, 111, Fernando Escartin. He still has a 2.5-minute advantage over Armstrong.
Well, despite all of his Tours de France and his high finishes, he's never won a stage yet, but he's just inside 3 kilometres away from that now. And again, Alex Zülle has dug deep into his reserves. He shed everybody, and he's trying to come up here to Richard Virenque. This man is such a courageous bike rider.
He really is doing a great ride. He's pulled himself up to Virenque, and he really is pulling himself back into this bike race. He's been in difficulty 3 or 4 times today, but he's had the courage to fight back. There is Lance Armstrong's group. Angel Casero has got across there to Lance Armstrong as well. Virenque is just about to make contact, and in fact I reckon Alex Zülle is going to do the same thing. So the man that he wanted to distance has recovered and pulled himself back into the bike race, as has in fact Kurt van der Wouw, number 86, the Lotto rider, who for me is one of the revelations of this year's Tour.
Yeah, absolutely. He's being overshadowed overshadowed by the revelation, of course, Lance Armstrong. Otherwise, we might be talking a lot more about Kurt van der Wouw. But Armstrong now still ahead of the riders who are desperately beginning to regroup here and form a pact around them. And Armstrong is back as well. So we're getting a group here of Dufaux, Armstrong, Casero, Vironk, and about to get on the back again, Alex Zülle.
Well, one of the spectators sticking something onto the backs of the riders there, and Armstrong won't be too happy about that. And if he gets a little bit closer, he might get a bop on the noggin there. But Armstrong getting himself composed again, getting himself back into the bike race, leaving all of the pace setting here up to Laurent Dufaux. But he will be surprised, I think, to see the recovery of these other riders, because I reckon when he took off at the bottom of this climb that he felt he was going to ride away from everybody again, as he did in Sestriere. And they've all managed to recover and pull themselves back up to the yellow jersey.
Well, again, Paul, I'm wondering if, in fact, he eased up rather than found the pace too much, because this rider seems to be in absolute control here. He looks at his rivals. He doesn't just follow the wheels. He answers everything they throw at him. He is riding like a real champion and a real leader of this Tour de France. And all of these riders, they've attacked him so much in the mountains that they have no answer to him at the moment. And now Virenque is making one of his rare attacks here. He goes, and look at the speed of Armstrong. Hardly a change of look on his face and a simple acceleration.
Incredible response to that attack. Richard Virenque trying to get himself away, pull himself up to Fernando Escartin, but nobody is eating into the time advantage that Fernando Escartin has today. But Armstrong now doesn't want to let anybody else get clear. That's why he responded immediately to that acceleration by Virenque. But you notice as well the white jersey of Alex Zülle. He's recovered perfectly, and he too has pulled himself back up there, but it's put Laurent Dufaux into difficulty.
Well, further up the mountain, and it can't be far away from the kilometre to go banner here. This is Fernando Escartin. And a lot of these people, remember, are Spanish now. They've been listening on the radio for hours, and now he's doing what he promised to do, and that was to attack the race leader in the Pyrenees. But I'm not so sure he's got the sort of time gains. 2:28 when he's so far behind is not a lot.
He really needed to pull back 4 or 5 minutes on a stage like this to even hope about getting himself closer to Lance Armstrong in the overall rankings. And another thing he's going to have to worry about is, in fact, trying to get time over Alex Zülle, because if he doesn't put too much time between himself and Alex Zülle, he could be losing his second place in the overall standings, because the Swiss rider has made an incredible comeback. After losing over 6 minutes on day 3 of the Tour, he's really climbed up the rankings.
Well, this was the day when everybody saw the Tour de France route announced. This was the day they all said would be the decisive stage of the race. It could be the turning point of the race, or in the case of Lance Armstrong, it could simply be consolidating him as the true leader of this Tour. He is not losing enough time to Fernando Escartin. Escartin will just go up towards the finishing now. This is the little stretch of road that they built at a cost of $100,000 just to finish the Tour de France on it.
And Fernando Escartin will be happy now, because this part of the road, in fact, levels off and drops down just ever so slightly to the finish line. Time to pull up his zip, and this is a victory that he is going to savour, because he's tried for so many years in the Tour de France to get himself a stage victory, and he's never managed to do so. And to win today so close to Spain will be absolutely magic.
Well, Escartin has never won a stage before. He's not going to be prevented from that now. Inside 200 metres to go. A mountaintop finish, in this case downhill, as he races towards the end of the 15th stage, the Queen stage of the Tour de France. And a real true climber is taking the flag at the end of it. That's for certain. He made his attack a long way out in the hope he would gain time. We'll know in a minute exactly what he has gained here. But Fernando Escartin has won the big stage of the Tour de France on the first ever vintage at Piau-Angoli, and for the first time, Paul, Lance Armstrong looked there just to be struggling for a moment.
Just going round the corner there, he lost a bit of time on the other two riders who he was with, Richard Virenque and Alex Zülle. I'm not sure if he is in serious difficulty, but he doesn't seem to be able to accelerate to stay with him. But he's not going to lose too much time here. He's only going to lose 10 or 15 seconds, but this is the first sign we've seen of any weakness in Armstrong.
And Richard Virenque now, can he finish second here? Remember, the French have still not won the stage, and it's not going to happen today either. Alex Zülle, well, he's been a remarkable example to young cyclists of how to suffer on the stage of a Tour de France or just any bike race and never lose sight of what you want to achieve. He has come back so many times, and here he is now fighting out a second-place finish on this very hard day. He keeps looking over his shoulder for Lance Armstrong, and for the first time for an awful long time in this Tour, if at all. He's going to take a few seconds away from the race leader, and he's still found the strength to sprint away. He gets second place. Vironk will take third, and then the clock will continue to count as the Maillot Jaune still safely on the shoulders of Lance Armstrong, who finishes here in fourth.
Well, that was a big surprise for Lance Armstrong, but he didn't panic too much. He kept going to the line, but the day certainly in the Pyrenees, Phil, has to belong to Fernando Escartin, the incredible climber from Spain, and what a magic performance by him. But the damage has been done to a lot of the other big names in the Tour de France. Nardello and Dufaux coming over the line, but there was a lot of excitement at the back of the pack because Abraham Olano, in fact, we are being told, was involved in an accident earlier on.
And that was over the top of the Valerons, where he changed his bike, and he's coming in this small group over 7 minutes back. This man didn't care. He'd won the stage. He's the top Spaniard right now in the Tour de France, having beaten Alex Zülle, Richard Virenque, Lance Armstrong, and all of the other big names, and the many minutes across the board today. In fact, 38 minutes covering all of the finishes on the stage. Lance Armstrong, though, he keeps his yellow jersey. He's 6 minutes 19 seconds now ahead of Escartin, and there's confirmation of that. Alex Zülle, remember, lost 6 minutes on day 2 of the Tour de France. He's only 7.5 behind, more or less. So he's still very much in the frame, and now he's in with a real chance of a podium place in Paris as well. So that's what happens when you suffer. You get results.
You responded to a lot of the early attacks, but eventually when Escartin left, you didn't try to follow him. Why?
I didn't think he'd get that much time, and we thought it was better to just have the guys ride and keep him at a reasonable distance, but he was going fantastic today. I mean, he rode like an animal, and he deserved to win.
And a little sign of weakness at the end when you just got dropped off the back from Virenque and Zülle?
Yeah, I paid for my aggression at the bottom of the climb, and I don't know, the others didn't look so good, and Brunel, he told me to attack and just ride my own race, so, but I paid in the end.
Yes, Lance, but nothing too serious, just a few seconds. Richard Virenque consolidating his lead in the King of the Mountains and looking now for a 5th title in the last 6 years. And a good competition in the green jersey, 10 points separating Zabel and O'Grady. That sets a run and run. But on the descent of Valerons, where Olano had his problems, so too did the Banesto rider, Manuel Beltran. He hit a race referee and, in fact, continued through to the finish here, but retired on the start of this stage, stage 16, 192 kilometres, now taking the riders from Lannemezan down to Pau, crossing some of the most famous mountains in the Tour de France, which were introduced in 1910.
As always, Phil, it's the US Postal Riders on the front. A great day of conditions. Not too much wind, a west-northwesterly at 9 kilometres an hour. 26 centigrade in the valleys, but over the top of the mountain passes, it drops down to about 14 degrees Celsius. And there is a big possibility today of very low cloud.
The first sprint came at Saron-Colin at 16.5 kilometres, and the leader didn't matter too much, Sébastien Demarbay of Lotto, but the sprint for second place was very important between Eric Zabel and Stuart O'Grady, the two who seem to have made this competition for the green jersey their very own. And it was the green jersey holder, Zabel, who nipped in just ahead of Stuart O'Grady. Then towards the top of the Col d'Aspin, it wasn't a difficult climb, all the field contesting it here with sprinter Robbie McEwen going for it. Then a strange thing happened. He decided to sit up and allow the climbers going for the prizes, and it was Piccoli ahead of Virenque and Arietta as they crossed the line.
Very weird thing there, Richard. Robbie McEwen obviously not wanting to falsify the sprint at the top there, because Piccoli's still going to fight all the way to the finish. But on the Col de Tourmalet, Phil, the clouds certainly came down, and that had a major effect on the race, and that's where the big hammer came down.
And this was the start of all the day's action now, because here on the climb, a 17.5 kilometre climb, more than 10 miles into the sky of the granddaddy of them all, the Col de Tourmalet, over 2,000 metres. The breakaway forming here, and Tonkov is heading the charge here. Alberto Eli is the telecom rider. Echeverria, the little Spaniard who's had one win at Saint Flour, is in second place. And this is an interesting move. Armstrong and Escartin shadowing each other, but they're not in the breakaway.
It's amazing to see Pavel Tonkov, this man we were expecting to see high in the overall rankings, but he's had a very up and down Tour de France. He had an accident when we went into the Pyrenees. He was involved in a small crash on the road to Sestriere, but he never has really shown that he's going to be a big challenger for the final top 3 in this year's Tour. But he at the moment is lying 11th overall, and a ride today like this could move him very nicely into the top 10, but certainly not close to 3rd overall.
Well, Tonkov letting his impressions known on the young spectator there. You really can't do that to cyclists who are giving their all on a mountain like this. It is certainly no joke to these guys who are flat out at the moment. And just look at Kevin Livingstone here again, like Tyler Hamilton, doing his very, very best to help Armstrong. And at the back of the race, a little bit of trouble here.
Stefano Garzelli, the teammate of Marco Pantani, going out at the back of the group. Livingstone riding a stormer here on the slopes of the Col de Tourmalet, setting the pace ahead of Belli. Moving up into 3rd place, that's Alex Zuller. In this group, Fernando Escartin. He must obviously be thinking about this as the last possibility to try and consolidate his place in the overall rankings. He's currently lying 2nd, and I reckon he'd like a couple more minutes advantage over Alex Zuller before we go up to the final time trial. On the back, Laurent Duflo himself riding a very good, so consistent Tour de France this year.
Well, I think once Armstrong gets down to the finish in Pau today, providing he's lost no time, he'll feel he can win this Tour for sure now. The time trial will put the advantage back to him, evidenced by the fact he's won both time trials so far in this year's Tour. The Col de Tourmalet bathed in sunshine for the moment, but there's a lot of cloud lying around the surface, and Armstrong's group is not really losing time, Paul, just 25 seconds, and thanks to this rider here.
Unbelievable. They've been swapping around Tyler Hamilton and Kevin Livingstone every other day on the big mountain stages. Today is the turn of Kevin Livingstone, and this man rode a fantastic Tour de France last year for Bobby Julich when he was on the Cofidis squad, but he wanted to come back here to US Postal to ride alongside Lance Armstrong. He also lives in Austin, Texas, and is a very good friend of Armstrong, and today that's all he's thinking about. Not thinking about himself, not thinking about his own personal place at the end of this Tour de France, but the win for the team. And that's how a domestique has to think.
And well, probably as well he left Cofidis, I think, because it's been a tough tour for them with their lost Bobby Julich in the time trial at Metz, and Christophe Raniero, the winner of the King of the Mountains last year, has been a comparative failure this time around. These are the leaders still setting the pace. Tonkov looking good, and David Echeverria, I said earlier, he's a man for stage races, and again he's proving it now.
Well, it's a real rock around the clock for David Echeverria, because one day he's winning a stage on the flat and the next day he's right at the front in the mountains. He, in the moment, really is thinking more about Abraham Alano. He's hoping that Abraham Alano can recover, but he's not even in the group with Lance Armstrong at the moment, because Alano, once again, Phil, on this stage, is losing time on the mountain passes.
And once again, Paul, we have a huge bunch of talented climbers all staying together. This is a most unusual Tour de France for this very reason. And in fact, Armstrong now using as little energy as possible behind Livingstone. He knows that people like Escartin cannot wait much longer.
He's going to wait for those attacks to come, and he'll be trying to keep as much of his reserve as possible, because he feels that Escartin and Alex Zuller will certainly attack him. A lot of Spanish spectators have come out to see the race here as Alberto Eli leads them up towards the summit of the climb, and there, in fact, is the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong, and the man caught in the middle is Andrea Perron, who, in fact, is having a fantastic ride here at the Tour de France this year.
He's having the best tour we've ever seen, but he was with the leaders. He's slowly being tailed back here as Alberto Eli pushes on towards the summit now, and a lovely crowd up here. There have been moments when the crowds have not been as big this year on the Tour de France, but in the mountains here they are certainly as big. And Alberto Eli over the top, followed by Echeverria and Tonkov as they come up towards the summit of the Col de Tourmalet.
Kevin Livingstone still leading out Lance Armstrong. They're not too far from the summit of the Tourmalet either. You can see all the haze in the valley below. There is Andrea Perron. He just manages to survive in front of the group, and Escartin now moving forward. Just a little dummy attack to try and come up alongside Armstrong.
Well, Armstrong should feel pretty proud now, because he's over the top of the biggest climb remaining in the Tour de France. He brings out his little plastic top there to keep his chest warm on the long descent. It is a long descent off the Tourmalet as well, and you've got to be careful because they're going to descend into the mist.
It's going to be very difficult. We're getting reports already that the visibility on the descent is very bad indeed. That's why Pavel Tonkov is backing off David Echebarria here. Tonkov doesn't seem to go down these descents very well at all, but David Echebarria in front is really taking several risks, trying to pull himself back up to Alberto Eli. And Echebarria just does not know the position of his team leader, number 51 there, Abraham Olano. Once again on the slopes of these big mountains, he's losing almost 3 minutes.
And more big time being lost by Abraham Olano as he comes over the top. You're absolutely right, Paul. It's just on 3 minutes as he goes over. Now, this is the mist we were talking about as they start the descent. And the peculiarity of the descent of the Tourmalet, as you can see here, the roads are unguarded. So you really must be very careful.
Pavel Tonkov, Alberto Eli and David Echebarria now on the slopes of the Col de Soulor. There are only 2 big climbs left in the Tour de France, only 2 big climbs where Lance Armstrong could be put into serious difficulty. The Col de Soulor and then almost immediately after it the Col de l'Aubisque. But again, because of a general regrouping on the descent of the Tourmalet, Armstrong has got all his teammates, and what a great ride by the man in second place there in the line, Frankie Andreu. The man on the front was Christian van der Velde.
They have responded so well, and Van der Velde in his first tour has been simply fantastic. Smiled his way around the route.
Well, there's an attack here from Escartini. Waited for the slopes of the Soulor, and he's gone out there to try and attack Armstrong. Armstrong has responded immediately, and look who's there once again, the white jersey, Alex Zuller.
Well, you see, he's had to go here because the Soulor takes us onto the Aubisque, and that's the end of the mountains. And the reason Pantani isn't here is because he didn't like the long journey from the Aubisque down to the finishing line in Pau. So, again, this man has got to attack, but he's got all sorts of trouble with him in the first turn. And, well, the top 3 riders in the Tour are right here, Armstrong, Escartini and Zuller.
Well, Belly recovered there, 141, but also Richard Virenque has recovered as well. He's managed to pull himself back into this leading group. 5 riders at the front of the race. And in fact, Virenque didn't quite make the junction there. He's gone back a little bit. I was quite confident that he was going to come across. He was coming across with Belly. And this is the attack, Phil. This is how Escartine went straight off the front of the pack. Armstrong was surrounded by all of his teammates, but as soon as he saw the Spanish climber go, he was straight onto his wheel.
Unbelievable. He's so alert. He's watching for every move, and he didn't give him chance to even think he was going to open up a gap. And once you react like that, it tells the riders who are attacking, why bother, because this guy is watching everything.
Well, Stéphane Goubert was a Polti rider on the front there, trying to place Richard Virenque back into this bike race. Right on Virenque's wheel was Kevin Livingston. These are the 3 leaders, though. This is Pavel Tonkov on the front, followed by Alberto Eli. And this is the very select group behind. In fact, Christophe Raniero, who's trying to get himself into the bike race this year, is having a pretty seriously hard time.
He certainly is, and we're looking at around about 4 riders. They're not going to worry anybody too much, least of all Lance Armstrong, but the others will want to keep them under control, I would think.
Virenque now setting the pace himself, trying to pull himself back up to Armstrong. He realises there's not many climbs left in the Tour de France, and he is trying to keep his place as the best Frenchman in this year's Tour de France. It's 40 seconds the difference between Lance Armstrong and Richard Virenque at the moment. The man in second place there is Kevin Livingston, and he won't be helping the Frenchman at all.
Up towards the top of the Soulor, the clouds are closing in. The descent, we understand, is completely covered in mist, so we might lose pictures for a little while. But as we head up towards the summit now, Tonkov, he really hasn't given up, despite the fact he lost his Tour de France very early on. And then he had that crash into Sestriere. But right now he's looking to go over the top of the Col Soulor in the lead. It looks like he will, with Eli and Echebarria, and Roland Meyer still out on his own summit. And that's the order over the summit. Tonkov and Eli first and second. Echebarria right behind him, getting 22 points for third. Now back down, Paul, to the chase group.
Escartine is pulling himself right up this mountain. They've had a pretty serious attack here, Phil, on the Col de Soulor. He obviously wanted to go out and try and open himself up very early on. Here is Vinokourov, the man that many thought would be a big star in this year's Tour de France, but his first attempt really has been a sortie of reconnaissance to find out what it's all about. And I reckon next year he'll come back to this event and it'll be much more competitive.
A huge learning curve for the young man from Kazakhstan, but he will come back and do a good tour. He's ridden some good smaller tours. Indeed, this year he's ridden some brilliant tours, including the Dauphiné Libéré. Over the top of the climb then for the rest of the group here. And it looks to me as though now it's going to be a desperate chase down to the valley below before they start the final climb of the day, the Col d'Aubisque. And then those together at the top of the Col d'Aubisque should be together at the finishing line. Here comes Virenque. There's still a few points left for the mountains for him.
And what's more important for him is to try and pull himself up to that group of Lance Armstrong, because he doesn't want those other riders in the group to get too much advantage over him. He wants to try and keep himself in the bike race. He's looking to try and collect as close to the podium as possible. 4 minutes 15 seconds his deficit on the leaders on the road. That's the 3 men at the front of the race, Elie, Tonkov and Echevarria. And these are the conditions on the descent. And I tell you, Phil, I've descended this climb like this, and it really is pretty scary in some of the corners.
I don't know why it is, but these climbs down here are always in the mist, especially the Col d'Aubisque, as we saw Contreras there setting the pace. And these riders are the three leaders, and they are now climbing back up to the sky for the last time in this year's Tour de France. Elie, Tonkov and Echevarria.
Chasing group is not too far behind them. The last time check we had was just around about 1 minute, so the group of Lance Armstrong really is starting to eat into the lead that these three riders have here, and that a lot of work is being done by Alberto Elie, and even further down the main field is losing serious time. The group of Richard Virenque now, behind the group of Virenque, in fact, is the group of Abraham Olano. Olano is trying to pull himself back into the bike race, and there in second position, Andrea Perron. Riding a good day in the mountains, Salvatore Comesso.
He certainly is. This young man is also a big surprise. There are so many new names coming through, and I would like to think for the right reasons in this year's Tour de France, because it does seem that the dope controls and the blood tests that the riders have had to take, I think the message at last is getting home, and we're looking at a very hard-ridden, clean Tour this year, and I certainly hope so. And Lance Armstrong, if he is to win this Tour de France, will be an outstanding winner of it. He's surrounded by the Spanish riders who have never given up attacking him at all in this year's Tour. Well, at the back of this group now, it looks as though Francois Simon is getting himself into a spot of bother as well, along with Christophe Rinero.
Well, Francois Simon was in a breakaway before Escartine came up to him. He was hoping to survive over these two climbs and the possibility of following in the wheel marks of his brother, in fact, who won this stage into Pau back in 1985. But he's not going to do it because of the speed of Fernando Escartine at the front of this group. And what they're trying to do now is make sure they can put time between themselves, Abraham Olano, Laurent Dufaux and all the other major contenders who've actually missed out on this very vicious attack made by the Spaniard.
And there's no doubt that Lance Armstrong learned his lesson yesterday. He's not going to allow Escartine an inch. He's going to follow him everywhere. He really only has to look out for two riders, and the other one's riding behind him, Alex Zuller. If he keeps an eye on those two, it should be a cruise all the way to Paris.
Armstrong is very alert. He was waiting for that attack to come from Escartine, and as soon as it came, he was right onto the wheel.
And still riders dropping off the back there as they try just desperately to hold the group in front, just close enough to get themselves over the top of the Aubisque. They know once they're at the top of this mountain, it's not an easy climb either. Then the climbers' race is over this year, and it's just a long descent down to the bottom and a fast run into Pau. Escartine, this has to be his swan song, and he's going absolutely nowhere.
He's trying to eliminate as many riders as possible from this group. The man just holding on at the back is his own teammate. That's Contreras, the Colombian rider. Therein is Alex Zuller, very comfortable as well in third place. And the Vitaligo Seguros rider in the back there is also Garcia. But you can see from the front of the race, Armstrong is still 2 minutes and 17 seconds behind those three leaders. So they're in fact doing a great job. They're opening up a pretty serious advantage.
Now, they've got to survive, though, over the top of the climb, so I think 2 minutes won't be enough, but we'll find out. Nobody helping Escartine. He's keeping the rhythm going. In fact, he's hurting no one right now. Armstrong just sitting here, enjoying the ride through the mist to the top of the Col d'Aubisque, the last big mountain of the Tour, and he knows then advantage will swing back to him. And Garcia sitting at the back there. He's been riding well in the mountains these last couple of days. Belli is also here. And Carlos Contreras keeping his rhythm going, and it looks to me as though this little group now are going to finish the top of the climb together. Back up to the leaders, inside the last kilometre for them.
Alberto Elie rode last year for the Casino squad. He too was brought into this team this year to look after Jan Ullrich in the big mountains. He's turned out some pretty good performances, and he's been fairly aggressive, looking to try and get himself a stage victory. If he goes over the top of this climb, I reckon what's going to happen is there'll be a general regrouping on the road down into Pau, because that group of Lance Armstrongs looks pretty much compact and very concerned that they're all going to work together and try and get this race together before we go down into Pau. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Abraham Olano recovering and the whole race coming back together in a group of maybe 60 heading into the streets of Pau.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me either, but you never know, because remember what happened on the Passage du Gois. Once there was a split in the field, the yellow jersey, Lance Armstrong and everybody else drove it all the way to the finish, and poor Alex Zülle, amongst others, lost 6 minutes. We've never seen or heard of Michael Bogart since that day, and he came to the Tour de France as a pre-race favourite, but I think he was destroyed mentally as well as physically.
Absolutely, he wanted to try and get himself up to try and win the Alpe d'Huez, because that is the home of the Dutch riders. They always love to excel when they go there, but he never managed to get himself into the bike race, and he's ridden around this Tour de France in absolute anonymity. But there's an awful long way to go from the top of the Col de l'Aubis down to the finish line in Pau. In fact, 60 kilometers of racing, that's an hour and a half, so a lot of things could happen on the road down here.
So Ellie advantage as he comes up towards the summit, and I don't know whether there'll be a sprint or not. Probably not, because these riders are thinking now of the finishing line, as Ellie leads Tonkov and Echebarria up the climb. Little David Echebarria, another one of the young revelations of this year's Tour de France. I met him on the first month he was a professional in Australia, in fact, when he was out there to ride his first race as a professional. And we thought him as a sprinter, but now see him as a climber. Ellie, Tonkov, Echebarria over the top of the last big mountain of this year's Tour.
Now this is the group of Lance Armstrong, the yellow jersey. Still the pace on the front of that group is being set by Fernando Escartin. Escartin is trying to do as much damage as possible. In fact, they've closed in an awful lot on the three leaders. The last time check, 1 minute and 26 seconds. And if Lance Armstrong puts in a pretty rapid descent, Phil, he could in fact find himself catching up the three leaders before the bottom.
So, well, we couldn't follow them on the descent because of the bad weather conditions. We're picking them up now on the Valley Road, and they're all coming back together again. This is a very select group now, Paul.
In fact, they have picked up the three leaders. This is the group at the front of the race, 12 riders, and those three leaders, Ellie, Tonkov and Echebarria, are in this group now. The group of Richard Virenque, the last time check we had, was more than 2 minutes and 47 seconds behind, so it is going to be a chase. It is going to be a man-against-man race all the way up to the finish line in Pau. Armstrong very happy to work here. Surprising to see him working in this group now, because there are 2 Kelme riders and 2 Banesto riders. Armstrong doesn't have any teammates, and he doesn't really have any reason to ride.
Well, Olano has got up into that Virenque group, as so have most of the riders who've missed the slip on the descent. But you see, with somebody like Escartin here now, Armstrong as well, they're driving clear of the rest of the race. And this sort of a breakaway, although it's not going to result in a victory for Escartin, it could almost certainly confirm his place on the podium in Paris.
That's why the Spanish riders are putting the pressure on at the front. These riders here in this group are trying to survive. They're trying to support the lesser leaders of the Tour de France, because now Abraham Olano is a lesser leader. He's not really going to get up to the podium position. He's not even going to finish the best Spanish rider in this year's Tour de France.
There's Alex Zülle. He will be thinking of the team lead in the Banesto racing strip, I would think, now, and he's going to drive this race on. This is Carlos Contreras, a teammate of Escartin. He struggled a little bit at times, but he's looking good again now, and he's prepared to give everything on this flat road and make as much time as he can for these 12 riders, and in particular for Escartin.
This is a great move today as well by the 2 Spanish teams, Kelme and Banesto. Banesto will be extending their lead at the top of the competition for the best team in this year's race. They look as if they're going to move Alex Zülle very close to the podium with this action this afternoon, but they will also have a pretty serious advantage when it goes to that team competition as well. And we'd have to go back through the books a long time to see when the last time a Spanish team won the best team at this year's the Tour.
Absolutely, and Banesto have had a pretty dismal year so far this year, and they've had a pretty good Tour de France, though, despite the fall to Alex Zülle. And here they are now, Zülle, and still Armstrong helping drive the race on a little bit here, with Belli just behind him, who's ridden so well for Festina, and Contreras still working with the group here.
It's amazing. There are a lot of riders in that group behind, a lot of big, strong riders from the Spanish Once team. There's a lot of riders from Lotto trying to chase, and, of course, 1 or 2 from Polti. But they've done nothing at all to eat into the advantage of this leading group. They had 2 minutes 47 seconds a while ago, and it's only come down to 2 minutes 30. And Contreras, not happy with the fact that this group is stopping working, he's decided to try and go it alone.
Well, we're in the streets of Pau here, but Contreras has literally ridden off the front here without launching an attack. He's realised now he's got the gap, and now he's started to move clear. Now, this is an interesting move because I don't think Armstrong will chase him down. Escartin has no reason to chase him down, and neither has Zuller really, except they're on a rival Spanish team. And so this guy may have made the move of the race, and he didn't even attack.
Those three guys will watch each other. Armstrong, Zuller and Escartin, they will match each other out. In fact, that's exactly what's happened. This is Vinokurov who's tried to go clear for the Casino squad. Alberto Eli, I don't know where he's got all his strength from today, but he too has seen the possibility of getting a stage victory at the Tour. And David Echavarria has moved across there as well from Once.
Well, Eli, first over the Tourmalet, first over the Obese, second over the Soulor. He certainly has had a good day. Inside 4 kilometres, up a nasty little climb just there as they bring themselves into the city of Pau now. And it looks like this breakaway is split for good. Contreras has created the split too.
Two riders in this group from Once. Marcos Serrano is the other rider from Once who's managed to get onto this group. And there's a Banesto rider also trying to get himself onto the back there. But this is the leading group of 3. Again, it's splitting up. Alberto Eli taking up 3rd place. He'll have pretty sore legs because he's been in the break nearly the whole of this afternoon stage. Contreras got caught out by the acceleration there.
Well, after Guerini winning at Alpe d'Huez, it's not quite the Alpe d'Huez finish in Pau, but we are still in the Pyrenees, and it's possible now for Eli, as this little group of 6 is now working together and heading up towards the finish.
The Banesto rider on the back is Jose Luis Arrieta. He's just managed to make contact, but if I was the team manager of Once, I would start to attack one at a time. They've got a great chance having 2 riders in the group, one against everyone else. Once you've attacked, you launch a counter-attack immediately afterwards if you get caught.
Well, I'm not sure whether they've heard you or not, Paul, but they've certainly started to move around a bit at the front, but the attack has come from the back. It looks like Contreras has gone. On the far right, no, it's not Contreras. In fact, that is Arrieta who's gone for Banesto. And so he came up and he's jumped away in the finishing straight here. Not quite, but it will be shortly. Well marked then by Vinokurov, and Eli has come on as well. So with 1 kilometre to go, this is going to go down to the sprint.
Watch out for a late attack, though, from Marcos Serrano, because they will now expect the sprint to go to David Echavarria, but they don't want to leave it because after such a long stage like this, it is a very risky situation to be in. That's Echavarria getting his hand in the air. He wants his teammate to come forward to help him out. There's the attack. Serrano's going down the right-hand side.
And he's been marked by Alexander Vinokurov, and they're all back together again. Now it's up to little David Echavarria if he can do anything about this. He's taken 3rd wheel. Primarily he is a sprinter, although he's shown us in this tour he's also a very good climber indeed. And it looks as though Serrano is now going to lead him out all the way to the line. But Eli, and I don't know where he's got his strength from today, is in the best position to win this stage now as he sits on the wheel of Serrano. And watch the man on the left now, because that's David Echavarria. He will not believe it if he wins a 2nd stage of the Tour de France. He's moved right onto his teammate's wheel. He tried to, but now he's been pushed off it, and he grits his teeth and goes for it. So David Echavarria being challenged by Contreras on the left. Contreras, though, hasn't got the speed of this little man. David Echavarria continues his wonderful Tour de France. 2nd stage win for him to match the one at Saint-Flour, and there's the little dance for you as well. Now, going back down the road, the rest of the breakaway is coming in.
Well, coming up to the line is Garcia for Vitaligo, but the big 3 riders in this Tour de France, Alex Zuller, Lance Armstrong and Escartin, have marked themselves out of the possibility of a stage victory. But coming up to the line, they're going to be led over by Belli, who just gets it there. And Belli putting in a great sprint just ahead of the Mapei rider, who was Pavel Tonkov.
But look at this, the young man with his tongue out, and he snatches the stage victory. He celebrates his birthday during the Tour de France as well, as he now gets 2 wins, beats Contreras, Eli and Vinokurov. Arrieta, Serrano, Belli led in the rest for 7th, including this man here, who keeps his overall lead in the Tour de France. Now he can really believe that he can win this race, because the time trial will be to his favour. 6 minutes 15 the gap over Escartin, so he comes away from the Pyrenees having lost just a little bit of time. Richard Virenque, though, is the winner of the King of the Mountains, and there's still a couple of days of racing to go, and this man continues to build a lead ever so slowly in the green jersey competition. Well done, Eric Zabel. But I think all of the riders smiling now as they leave the Pyrenees behind them. No more mountains to climb in this year's Tour de France, as the race now heads up the west coast of France, bound for Bordeaux. 141 riders still in, and the distance 200 kilometres. Hello again and welcome to the Tour de France. Well, yesterday was the last day in the mountains of this event, and it certainly was Lance Armstrong's longest day. He spent 5 hours on the bike, and then for 2 hours after that he tried to convince the media of this race that he really is riding it without chemical assistance. The team also asked the UCI, the world body, the International Cycling Union, if they would also release the confidential information on the drug tests he's given so far. Here's an extract from that statement. The UCI confirmed that the controls performed up to the 19th of July during the Tour de France have all produced negative results. The rider used the ointment Semolite, which contains triamcinolone to treat a skin allergy. In view of all these elements, the UCI affirms in the strongest terms that such use is permitted by the rules and therefore does not constitute any form of doping. This whole situation has come about because of an article appearing in the French daily newspaper Le Monde, and this was Lance Armstrong's answer on French television last night.
We're not talking about doping. We're talking about a simple skin cream. And I wanted to talk to the press. I always want to talk to, when there's a problem, I want to speak with the press. Today, there was clearly a problem. I wanted to speak to the press conference, come here on Vélo Club, explain the situation. Le Monde is looking for a doping story, but there's not one. There's a story of skin cream.
And Le Monde, by the way, being the newspaper and not the American cyclist who's won the Tour de France 3 times and is here now witnessing this incredible performance by Lance Armstrong. The rollout then of the 17th stage now, 200 kilometres from Ronx to Bordeaux. And the riders facing up to what should be, Paul, by tradition, a long, hot day in the saddle on very straight roads.
Unbelievable, the roads in this part of France, long and straight through the area called Les Landes.
Into Bordeaux, and as we expected, the whole field coming in together. Now, can Erik Zabel at last get that stage win, which would equal the German record along with Rudi Altig? He set it. He's won 8 stages. Zabel hasn't won a stage for a couple of years. He's got his teammates to lead him out. He looks good.
He looks good. Alberto Eli swings off, leaves it up now to Kai Hundermark. Right behind him, Stefan Westermann. He's the pilot fish for Erik Zabel. Zabel's right up there, but on his wheel is Tom Steels.
Well, Steele's obviously the danger man sitting in the slipstream there of Zabel. Stuart O'Grady is not to be seen here at the moment now. The last lead-out man, as always, is young Stefan Weissermann here. His first Tour de France. He's not that young, by the way, but he's now very, very strong. The Steels, though, is dangerous just on the wheel of Zabel. Now, a little bit of hesitation, but Zabel is going now. George Hincapie's trying to get in. So, too, is Robbie McEwen. McEwen goes right, but Steels comes through the middle and makes it look easy. Tom Steels has refound his sprinting legs straight out of the Pyrenees. The face there, Paul, of Zabel.
Zabel just looked across. He knew he was beaten. As soon as he saw the white jersey of Tom Steels coming by, he knew he had nothing left to respond. Steels is certainly the fastest sprinter in the Tour over the last 50 metres.
So Steels has a personal tally of 1-3 and disqualified in 1 now after winning 4 stages last year. Look at this, though. He makes it look so easy. He is so much quicker than anybody else in this Tour once he reads the sprint just right. And here is poor Stuart O'Grady. In fact, he had a crash just in the last kilometre, a little bit of a contretemps with other riders, including Robbie McEwen, and he was dumped on the ground, and as a result, he's lost all hope now of that green jersey because he got no points today. Zabel in 3rd place, George Hincapie taking 4th, and the other sprinter Martinelli just behind. So the sprinters' stage is over at Bordeaux. The riders now looking to the 18th stage here as they go up to nearby Jonzac to the ride to Futuroscope, which is the scene of the next time trial and the last time trial of the Tour. Riders rolling away, and it's a flat road all of the way here of 184.5 kilometres.
And again, it should be a day for the sprinters because they need to keep themselves together. But what happened again, Phil, was the big break got clear, and running into the finish, 13 men were at the head of their race.
And out front they've been for the most part of the day. They got away at 25 kilometres, and now it's all down to which one of them can win the sprint here. Nobody again, Paul, is endangering the race leader overall, but this man in the last kilometre, Gianpaolo Mondini, has got away.
He surprised them all again. The thing is, there were 5 French riders in that group and 4 Italians. But the strange thing is, once an Italian gets clear, they do not chase him down. They leave it up to the other nationalities. And again, the French still chasing a stage victory, and they can't pull back Jean-Paul Mondini, who so far this year has got 1 win to his credit, a stage in the Tour of Japan.
And don't forget, he wasn't coming here until about 48 hours before the race began, because the team wasn't one of the original selections. They were first reserve. Now he's going to go home with a stage win in the Tour de France, because I don't think they're going to come back to him now. He's sprinting home to the area where the big showdown will come tomorrow in the time trial. Gianpaolo Mondini of the Cantina Tollo team is coming home and looking very, very good indeed. It's been an opportunist breakaway, and they should never have let it happen.
They should never let it happen. The teams of the sprinters should have controlled it. They tried to over the first 30 or 40 kilometres, keeping the pace high, but this man timed it to perfection. He's cheated all of the French riders again. 5 Frenchmen in that group. Jean-Cyril Robin, the white jersey, trying to come up to the line, but once again it's going to go over the border, this time to Italy, Jean-Paul Mondini.
And Robin, in disgust, waves his right arm, because again the French have failed to win a stage, and he's got second, and I've lost count of the second places they have had. But you know, they are set to have the worst tour since 1926, and they're running out of chances. There's only 2 stages left to win. But this rider won't care, because he has got his stage victory in the Tour de France, the biggest stage victory of any race he's ever had. And there are 120 riders in this sprint here now, which is for 14th place. And it looks as though Robbie McEwen is going to get the better this time of Zabel. And O'Grady was just in there off to the right as well. So he loses even more points now to Eric Zabel. There's the result of the stage. Mondini ahead of Robin Vinokourov. Piccoli again there snatching 4th place. Overall, Lance Armstrong keeps his lead, and the names behind him are just the same as they were at the start of the day. Well, we're looking down on the theme park now of Futuroscope. In fact, this will be the scene of the big depart of the Tour de France next year. This is where it all starts from, but right now Lance Armstrong is looking where he's going to finish the 86th edition right here. He's won both time trials so far, Paul, and he's looking now to join some big names if he can make this 3.
A very difficult time trial, 57 kilometres. All the big names been out and looked at the course this morning, and Armstrong last man to start.
Last man to start. He won the prologue at Le Puy de Fou. Then he regained the yellow jersey at the time trial at Metz. For nearly 2 weeks, he has successfully defended that with a great team around him. Now, can he even increase his lead, or can he at least win the race?
The most important thing for Armstrong is to get round and not lose too much time to keep himself at the top of the leaderboard. The big battle really is for 2nd and 3rd place. The battle has been between Fernando Escartin, who's currently in 2nd, and Alex Zuller, the Swiss rider, who is currently in 3rd. And it's that fight that is really going to decide who gets onto the highest step of the podium alongside Lance Armstrong.
Well, these riders were split by 3 minutes at the start house today, but look at this now. Armstrong is absolutely flying here, because that man in front is Fernando Escartin, and at 20 kilometres to go, he's going to have him.
He's pulled back 1 minute every 10 kilometres on Escartin, but I tell you, one man doing some fast times out on the course is Alex Zuller. Zuller has really ridden well over this course, but the best times so far are being set by Rick Verbrugge, but this, Phil, I have to say, is unbelievable. Armstrong has caught his 3-minute man and gone straight by.
Now, Escartin, he'll do well to try and hold on to the skirt tails of Armstrong here, because this is the rider setting the time checks ahead of them. Alex Zuller, the other two still to arrive there, knocking off Rick Verbrugge off the top of the timer boards. But these two now are locked in battle, and it might help Escartin.
Well, if Escartin can just keep Lance Armstrong in his sights, Hamilton has the best time at the finish line. Tyler Hamilton, 1:09.52, and he's going to beat the time trial champion of the world, Abraham Olano, who is not going to win this stage.
Well, with only 1 day to go, the boys said to Tyler Hamilton, go out and really show them how to ride, and he's done that now, because Olano has come in, and only a 1:10.35 for 3rd best for him, so that's a big surprise. Armstrong, though, is still setting the best times.
This is at the 42-kilometre time check. Hamilton went through there in 52 minutes 23 seconds, and Armstrong is pretty close to that.
Armstrong is a lot better than that right now, and Casero, he's had a great ride today, this man. He's fought for a high finish, and he's aiming at Richard Virenque's top place in the GC, and with a time like that, he might get it. 2nd best time. He's even beaten Olano. That's incredible.
Still, it's unbelievable. Tyler Hamilton is at the top of the leaderboard, and all the big names have nearly come in. The next man coming very close to it is going to be Alex Zuller. Zuller is trying to get the victory. Look at the time to beat, 1:09.52. Zuller looks as if he may well go inside that.
Well, Zuller was 51.19 at 42 kilometres. Armstrong's gone through quicker than that there. Zuller, though, is the leader at the finishing line. 1:8.26. So, do you know, Paul, there's a real chance here. Now he's going to finish second again to Lance Armstrong, and I'll make that the 4th time this tour.
Laurent Dufaux wanted to do a good ride here this afternoon, but he's not going to finish inside the top 20. He's well outside. The next man who's going to come up to the finish line is going to be Lance Armstrong. But I think, Phil, that Armstrong is cracking over the last 5Ks.
Well, this is how he's ridden his time trials. He's gone as fast as he possibly could. His legs have sold out a little bit. And in fact, the time checks are saying that there's not much between Zuller and Armstrong right now. There was a big gap at one stage, but you're right. Armstrong has slowed down, and Zuller, don't forget, still has the best time at the finish of 1:8.26. This is going to have to be a sprint to the line here if Armstrong wants to join names like Eno, Merckx and Indurain as having won all of the time trials of a Tour de France. Look at the clock. Zuller is 1:8.26. There's still a ways to go here. This is going to be very close. Armstrong was clearly ahead earlier. Now he's not. Armstrong doesn't know it, but he needs to sprint to get the victory. As the clock counts on, he makes it ever so close, but he makes it, and 1:8.17 is good enough. And there he is on the podium. So Lance Armstrong has won all of the time trials, and he's now set to win the Tour de France. He has beaten, in fact, Alex Zuller by 9 seconds there. He now leads overall by 7 minutes and 37.
Stage 20 of the Tour de France, 143 kilometres and culminating with 10 laps of the Champs-Élysées.
The final day of the Tour de France, and Lance Armstrong signs in for his last day as leader of the race. Today in Paris, he will be crowned as winner. 141 of 180 will make the Champs-Élysées today after almost 4,000 kilometres racing on French, Italian and Spanish roads. Lance Armstrong knows, barring a fall, his lead of 7 minutes 37 seconds is unassailable. And it really is a most beautiful day here in Paris for the arrival of the race. But before we see the riders come onto the Champs-Élysées, let's go to Gary Imlach, who will now look back at a remarkable 3 weeks for Lance Armstrong.
I don't think it's any secret that my form is good and my condition is good, and when somebody has good condition, the possibilities open up a lot.
Lance Armstrong took a crowbar to the possibilities with a storming prologue ride at Le Puy de Fou, marking his return to the Tour with his first ever yellow jersey. His pre-race interview was starting to sound prophetic.
It's very open, and I think the possibilities for something strange to happen in the first week are high.
Cut to stage 2 and a crash on the Passage du Gois. Lance was safely ahead of it. His main rivals, including Alex Zuller, over 6 minutes behind. It was a huge slice of luck, but not one he necessarily needed. Another storming time trial performance at Metz on stage 8 proved that. And if there were any question marks against his climbing, he removed them along with his main rivals with a majestic solo win at Sestriere.
This will be some victory salute. It'll be a while before we know if it is as the winner of the Tour de France, but there are few people in this race now will doubt that.
Sadly, the doubts, at least in the French press, were all about the legitimacy of Armstrong's performance, and he found himself having to defend more than the lead.
I can emphatically say I'm not on drugs. Look, I understand the French have had a rough 3 weeks, and I understand that if they don't win a stage, it's the first time since 1926. But don't take it out on the medical miracle American in the yellow jersey. That's not fair.
No amount of sniping can dent Armstrong's sense of achievement, though, or dilute the pride he'll feel when he hits the Champs-Élysées in yellow.
To ride into Paris and have a little bike ride in the middle is unbelievable. And to think that I could wear the yellow jersey there is fantastic. It will be something that I will cherish, and hopefully something that I can do again.
Well, the way he's ridden this year, a lot of people will now believe he most certainly can do it again. The final stage here, the Lanterne Rouge this year, Jackie Giron, he's found himself a little red light as he rides along. Very traditional, this bit, Paul. A lot of the riders have got themselves coloured hair as well.
Everybody has a bit of fun on the last day. They're so happy to have got round the 3-week race, the almost 4,000 kilometres, 2,500 miles of the Tour de France. Jackie Giron having a bit of a laugh, but so too is the champion of France, Francois Simon. In fact, he's had a special hairdo for the day.
Well, that's the French tricolour, but this must have been a bit more difficult. This is the Danish flag here on the head of Lars Mikkelsen, who went ahead, had to sit down on a cup of tea before he rejoined the race. But he didn't have any problem catching up because the race was in no hurry going towards the streets of Paris. Lance Armstrong with his victorious team now in happy mood because the wheels don't start to turn in anger by tradition until they come into Paris.
Just to give those boys a very big thank you for the job they've done over the last few days. But you know, it's a great ride at the Tour de France, riding to the finish, but you always have to be very careful because when the race is not too fast, you can end up coming down.
And that is Robbie McEwen, and the rider going down with him is Udo Bolt. A rather nasty fall, but happily both on the bikes and riding as the race was now ready to enter the streets of Paris. Everybody up and running. Udo Bolt, the champion of Germany, last to be pushed away. Now for the action.
This is the sight every bike rider wishes for, Phil, to see the Eiffel Tower, because they realise very shortly afterwards they're going to ride onto the Champs-Élysées, and then everything happens. Everybody fights to go to the front, and it nearly always is a sprinter's dream.
Down the banks of the beautiful River Seine, the Eiffel Tower, and the boys who have guided Lance Armstrong in that yellow jersey for 2 full weeks now bring him onto the Champs-Élysées, and there's no doubt now who will win the Tour de France, but we're only in doubt as to who will win the final stage. This is the Rue de Rivoli as we head now towards the Place de la Concorde.
A great performance by US Postal, keeping this field all together for 2 whole weeks, looking after Lance Armstrong on every stage, and a big bunch now coming up to the line, and once again Team Telecom in control.
Well, Telecom still trying to find a way through for Erik Zabel, who's going to win that green jersey for the 4th time. Zabel goes on the right. McEwen challenges him on the far right, and this is a very good finish by McEwen. He's never won a stage in the Tour de France, but he's close, and this time he's done it. Robbie McEwen gives a yelp of delight there, but the winner of the Tour de France in that big field is the American Lance Armstrong, and what a ride that has been. It'll be remembered in the millennium as one of the finest sporting achievements in the history of not just cycling, but of any sport. And there he is now as he rolls to a halt for the last time. He receives the congratulations from his teammates and from other riders as he turns in now towards the Tribune of Honour. Let's have a look at that sprint again, though, as Robbie McEwen on the far right finally got the finish he has always promised to do in his Tours de France, and that is get a stage win. He now becomes only the 4th Australian rider ever to win a stage of the Tour de France. Happy days for the man from Brisbane in Queensland as he salutes the crowd here on the Champs-Élysées and takes the winner's award. This is one he really wanted. What a turnaround for his season, and the tears are about to fall, I think. And Robbie McEwen winning ahead of Erik Zabel. He was injured at the start of the year in Paris-Nice, and he's now obviously back in good condition. Stuart O'Grady, another Australian there, getting 4th place, and Tom Steele's out of it. Didn't got it all wrong, finishing 8th. But to the man who has won the Tour de France, Lance Armstrong, only the 2nd American cyclist ever, and the greatest story you would ever wish, from day 1 when he won the prologue to today when he won the Tour. He wins the Tour by a massive margin of 7 minutes 37 seconds over Alex Zuller, who has been 2nd before and now has to be 2nd again. Fernando Escartin gets his best finish ever in 3rd. Laurent Dufaux hung on there for 4th, ahead of a fast-finishing Angel Casero and a rather limping Abraham Olano. In the green jersey competition, well, he's done it 4 times straight, and this is one of the best races we've seen for the green jersey in years, thanks to the great riding of Stuart O'Grady. And so Erik Zabel joins Sean Kelly, but he's the only man to win it 4 times in a row. The King of the Mountains has been won by the man the organisation tried to ban. When they were forced to take him, he again showed he is a great climber. Richard Virenque has now won that title 5 times in 6 years. The Banesto at times had to fight for it, but they ran out the winners in the team. So the Tour de France is over and Lance Armstrong is the winner. A miracle, a fairy tale, call it what you will. Right now it's reality. And Lance Armstrong can now enjoy the fruits of being only the 2nd American rider to win the Tour de France. I hope you've enjoyed the coverage. This one really is one for the history books. Goodbye.